In the beginning, there existed only chaos, not the disorder we might imagine today, but rather an infinite yawning void where neither matter nor energy had yet taken recognizable form. This primordial state represented the absolute absence of structure, a boundless chasm that preceded all existence. Ancient Greek cosmogony, as preserved in Hesiod's Theogony and other fragmentary sources, describes this initial condition as the fundamental starting point from which all divine beings and cosmic order would eventually emerge. From this primeval emptiness came the first stirrings of existence itself. The process was neither violent nor gradual, it simply was, as if the very concept of being suddenly manifested within the void. The earliest deities did not arrive through birth in any conventional sense, but rather through a process of spontaneous generation that defied the natural laws that would later govern the universe. These primordial beings represented the most fundamental forces and concepts that would shape reality itself. Gaia emerged first among these primordial entities, embodying the very essence of Earth in its most complete form. Unlike later anthropomorphic deities, Gaia existed as both a conscious divine being and the physical substance of the world itself. Her form encompassed every mountain range, every fertile valley, every grain of soil that would eventually support life. Ancient sources describe her as possessing an awareness that extended through every root system and geological formation, making her simultaneously the most nurturing and most formidable of the primordial powers. Her consciousness permeated the bedrock itself, allowing her to sense every footfall and every seed that would ever touch her surface. Tartarus manifested as the deepest, most remote region of existence, positioned far below what would become the surface world. This primordial deity represented more than simply an underworld. He embodied the concept of ultimate depth and imprisonment. Ancient descriptions placed Tartarus at such a profound distance below the earth that a bronze anvil dropped from the surface would fall for 9 days and nights before reaching his domain. His realm existed as a place of absolute confinement, surrounded by walls of bronze and gates that could contain even the most powerful divine beings. The very air within Tartarus carried a weight and oppressiveness that could crush lesser spirits, while his consciousness maintained eternal vigilance over those condemned to his depths. Eros appeared as the fundamental force of attraction and generation, though his primordial form bore little resemblance to the later, more familiar depiction as Aphrodite's companion. This ancient Eros represented the cosmic principle that would drive all future creation and reproduction. His influence extended beyond mere romantic or sexual attraction to encompass the basic forces that would compel atoms to form molecules, celestial bodies to maintain their orbits, and all living things to seek continuation through offspring. Ancient theogonies describe him as possessing an irresistible power that could affect even the most stoic deities, compelling them toward union and creation despite their individual wills. Erebus emerged as the personification of deep darkness, representing not merely the absence of light, but the active principle of shadow and obscurity. His domain existed in the spaces between other realms, in the hidden places where light had never penetrated and never would. Unlike simple darkness, Erebus possessed a substance and weight that could be felt by those who encountered it. His presence brought not just visual blindness, but a profound disorientation that affected all senses simultaneously. Ancient sources describe his darkness as having a texture similar to thick wool, muffling sounds and deadening echoes, while creating an environment where even divine beings could become lost. Nyx manifested as night itself, wielding power so absolute that even Zeus would later show her deference. Her dominion extended across the entire cosmos during the hours of darkness, and her influence shaped the fundamental rhythm of existence. Ancient descriptions present her as travelling across the sky in a chariot drawn by black horses, her dark robe studded with stars that she had gathered from the depths of space. Her presence brought not just darkness, but also the dreams, fears, and hidden thoughts that emerge when daylight fades. Unlike Erebus, whose darkness was static and concealing, Nyx's night carried movement and change, bringing with it the passage of time and the cycle of rest and renewal. These primordial deities established the basic framework within which all subsequent divine generations would operate. Their emergence from chaos created the first distinctions and boundaries in what had previously been an undifferentiated void. Each represented not just a force or location, but a fundamental aspect of reality that would remain constant throughout all future cosmic developments. The next phase of creation began when Gaia, through her own divine will and without any partner, brought forth Uranus and Pontus. This process of parthenogenesis demonstrated her supreme creative power and established her as the mother of all subsequent divine lineages. Uranus emerged as the personification of the sky, but not simply the blue expanse visible during daylight hours. He encompassed the entire celestial sphere, including the stars, the movements of celestial bodies, and the various atmospheric phenomena that occurred within his domain. Uranus manifested as a vast overarching presence whose body formed the dome of heaven itself. His physical form stretched across the entire world, with his hands and feet touching the four cardinal directions, while his torso curved overhead. Ancient sources describe his skin as having the deep blue colour of the night sky, dotted with points of light that represented the stars. His breath created the winds that moved across Gaia's surface, while his tears became the rain that nourished her soil. Unlike the distant abstract sky of later philosophical thought, Uranus maintained an active presence in the world, constantly interacting with the earth below through weather patterns and celestial movements. Pontus emerged as the primordial sea, representing not just the oceans but all bodies of water that would ever exist. His domain included every drop of moisture, from the vast oceanic expanses to the smallest mountain streams. Ancient descriptions present him as having a fluid, ever-changing form that could appear as a massive humanoid figure composed entirely of seawater, complete with waves for hair and foam for breath. His consciousness extended through every current and tide, allowing him to monitor all activity that occurred within or upon his waters. Unlike later sea deities who would rule over specific aspects of maritime life, Pontus embodied the fundamental essence of water itself. The creation of Uranus and Pontus established the basic cosmic order that would govern all future existence. Gaia represented the solid foundation, Uranus provided the overarching celestial realm, and Pontus filled the spaces between them with the waters necessary for life. This tripartite division created the fundamental structure within which all subsequent divine and mortal activities would take place. The union between Gaia and Uranus represented the first divine marriage and the foundational relationship from which the Titans would emerge. This pairing brought together the earth and sky in a cosmic embrace that would prove both creative and ultimately destructive. Their relationship differed fundamentally from later divine marriages in that it represented the joining of two aspects of the physical universe itself, rather than simply the alliance of two anthropomorphic deities. The physical nature of their union involved Uranus descending each evening to embrace Gaia, covering her entirely with his celestial form. This daily coupling ensured the continued fertility of the earth, while also establishing the regular cycle of day and night. Ancient sources describe their embrace as generating tremendous creative energy that manifested in the birth of increasingly complex and powerful offspring. Each act of union between them strengthened the bonds holding the cosmos together, while simultaneously creating the potential for future conflict. Their relationship established patterns that would influence all subsequent divine marriages. The dynamic between the overarching protective male principle and the nurturing creative female principle became a template that later generations of deities would follow, though none would achieve the same level of cosmic significance. The creative power generated by their union exceeded that of any later divine pairing, producing offspring who would themselves become the parents of the Olympic gods. The cosmic hierarchy that emerged from these primordial relationships created distinct realms with clearly defined boundaries and functions. The uppermost realm belonged to Uranus, encompassing everything above the Earth's surface, including the atmosphere, celestial bodies, and the various phenomena associated with weather and astronomy. This realm operated according to regular patterns and cycles that reflected Uranus's orderly nature, though it also possessed the capacity for dramatic displays of power through storms and other atmospheric disturbances. The middle realm belonged to Gaia, representing the solid earth and everything that grew upon or within it. This realm served as the stage for most divine and mortal activities, providing the stable foundation necessary for complex life and civilization. Gaia's realm included not just the surface features of mountains, valleys and plains, but also the underground spaces where precious metals and gems formed over countless ages. Her domain extended from the highest mountain peaks to the deepest caves, encompassing every environment where terrestrial life could flourish. The lowest realm initially belonged to Tartarus, though it would later be subdivided as the cosmic order became more complex. This realm served as the ultimate boundary of existence, the place beyond which even divine beings could not travel. Its primary function involved the confinement of entities too dangerous or chaotic to remain in the upper realms, though it also served as the source of certain chthonic powers that influenced events in the world above. Between these primary realms existed transitional zones, where the boundaries blurred and different cosmic principles intersected. The seas ruled by Pontus occupied the spaces between earth and sky, while underground rivers connected Gaia's realm with the depths of Tartarus. These intermediate zones would later become important as the cosmic order grew more sophisticated and required more nuanced divisions of authority and responsibility. The cosmic union between Gaia and Uranus produced offspring whose scale and power dwarfed anything that had come before. These children emerged not as helpless infants, but as fully formed divine beings, each possessing dominion over fundamental aspects of existence. The process of their birth defied conventional understanding. They materialized from the creative energy generated by their parents' embrace, taking physical form that combined earthly substance with celestial power. Each birth sent tremors through this cosmic order, as reality itself adjusted to accommodate these new centers of divine authority. The first group to emerge consisted of 12 beings who would become known as the Titans, though their original designation carried connotations of straining and stretching that reflected their immense power. These 12 represented the most sophisticated divine beings yet to exist, possessing both the raw elemental force of their primordial grandparents and a more refined consciousness that allowed for complex thought and planning. Their emergence marked the transition from the simple cosmic divisions of the primordial age to a more intricate divine hierarchy with specialized roles and responsibilities. Oceanus manifested as the eldest of the Titans, his form encompassing the great river that the ancients believed encircled the entire world. Unlike Pontus, who embodied the static masses of seawater, Oceanus represented flowing water in all its forms, rivers, streams, springs, and the great oceanic current that connected all bodies of water across the earth. His physical appearance combined human characteristics with aquatic features. A powerful torso that could expand to continental proportions, arms that extended into countless tributaries, and a beard composed of flowing water that never ceased its movement. Ancient sources describe his voice as carrying the sound of rushing water, capable of ranging from the gentle babbling of a brook to the thunderous roar of a waterfall depending on his emotional state. The domain of Oceanus extended far beyond simple water management. He controlled the hydrological cycle that brought fresh water to all terrestrial life, managing the complex system of evaporation, precipitation, and runoff that maintained the planet's ecological balance. His consciousness flowed through every watercourse, allowing him to monitor activities across vast distances and serve as a conduit for information between remote regions. The ancient Greeks recognized his importance by considering him the source of all rivers and streams, with each body of fresh water representing an extension of his divine essence. Coeus emerged as the titan of intellect and foresight, though his specific domain encompassed the axis around which the celestial sphere rotated. His name connected him to questioning and inquiry, reflecting his role as the divine principle behind rational thought and cosmic observation. Ancient sources describe him as possessing an unusually tall and lean physique, with eyes that held the depth of starlight and hands that moved with the precision of astronomical instruments. His presence brought clarity to complex problems and the ability to perceive patterns that remained hidden from other observers. The intellectual domain of Coeus extended beyond mere scholarly pursuits to encompass prophecy and divine revelation. He possessed the unique ability to perceive the underlying mathematical principles that governed cosmic movements, allowing him to predict future events based on celestial calculations. His knowledge included the secret names and properties of stars, the precise measurements of cosmic distances, and the intricate relationships between different celestial phenomena. Later traditions would associate him with the establishment of oracular sites, where mortals could access fragments of his cosmic knowledge. Creus manifested as the titan of constellations and stellar measurement, his authority extending over the organization and cataloguing of celestial bodies. His physical form reflected his astronomical nature, skin that appeared to contain actual starlight, hair that shifted like the Milky Way across the night sky, and a voice that resonated with the harmony of celestial spheres. Ancient descriptions present him as maintaining meticulous records of stellar positions and movements, creating the first systematic approach to astronomical observation that would later influence human understanding of the heavens. The responsibilities of Creus included establishing the seasonal calendar based on stellar observations and maintaining the stability of constellation patterns that served as navigational aids. His domain encompassed the measurement of time through astronomical means, the prediction of eclipses and other celestial events, and the preservation of astronomical knowledge for future generations. He worked closely with other titans to ensure that celestial movements remained synchronized with terrestrial cycles, maintaining the cosmic harmony that allowed life to flourish. Hyperion emerged as the titan of light and solar observation, though his authority preceded the creation of the sun itself. His domain encompassed the principle of illumination and the various phenomena associated with the interaction between light and matter. Ancient sources describe his appearance as almost painful to observe directly, skin that glowed with internal radiance, eyes that blazed like miniature suns, and movements that left trails of golden light in the air. His presence could dispel darkness and reveal hidden truths, making him both a source of enlightenment and a force to be approached with caution. The cosmic role of Hyperion involved regulating the distribution of light across the world and maintaining the balance between illumination and shadow. He possessed detailed knowledge of optical phenomena, including reflection, refraction, and the creation of rainbows, using this understanding to create spectacular displays that served both practical and aesthetic purposes. His influence extended to the growth of plants through photosynthesis, the warming of the Earth's surface, and the creation of weather patterns driven by solar energy. Iapetus manifested as the titan associated with mortality and the measurement of human lifespans. His domain encompassed the concept of finite existence and the transition between life and death that would later characterize mortal beings. Ancient descriptions present him as having a more somber appearance than his siblings, skin with the pale color of bone, eyes that held the weight of countless endings, and a voice that carried undertones of finality. His presence reminded other divine beings of the temporary nature of individual existence, even among immortals. The responsibilities of Iapetus included establishing the principles that would govern mortal life when humans eventually appeared. He developed the concepts of aging, natural death, and the inheritance of characteristics from parents to offspring. His knowledge encompassed the biological processes that would allow complex life forms to reproduce and evolve, as well as the psychological mechanisms that would help mortals cope with their awareness of mortality. Later traditions would remember him as the father of Prometheus and the ancestor of the human race. Cronus emerged as perhaps the most complex and ultimately significant of the 12 original Titans. His domain encompassed time itself, but not the simple chronological progression that mortals experience. Instead, he controlled the deeper aspects of temporal flow, the aging process, the cycles of growth and decay, and the inexorable progression of events toward their destined conclusions. Ancient sources describe his physical appearance as constantly shifting between youth and old age, with features that reflected different stages of life depending on the observer's perspective. The temporal authority of Cronus extended to the regulation of seasonal cycles, the timing of agricultural activities, and the coordination of various natural processes that required precise synchronization. His consciousness existed simultaneously across multiple time periods, allowing him to perceive past, present, and future as equally real and immediate. This temporal awareness made him uniquely suited to understand the long-term consequences of actions and the complex web of cause and effect that connected all events. The female Titans possessed equally impressive domains and capabilities. Theia manifested as the Titaness of sight and the precious metals that reflected light. Her authority encompassed both physical vision and the deeper perception that allowed beings to understand the true nature of what they observed. Ancient descriptions present her as having an ethereal beauty, enhanced by ornaments of gold and silver that seem to generate their own illumination. Her eyes possessed the ability to see across vast distances and through various forms of concealment, making her an invaluable source of information about events occurring throughout the cosmos. Rhea emerged as the Titaness of fertility and the flowing of time as it related to generational succession. Her domain encompassed the processes of birth, growth, and the nurturing care that allowed young beings to reach maturity. Ancient sources describe her as possessing a maternal presence that could comfort even the most distressed individuals, with hands that promoted healing and growth wherever they touched. Her authority extended to the protection of young creatures and the establishment of family bonds that provided stability across generations. Themis manifested as the Titaness of divine law and proper custom, her authority encompassing the establishment of social order and religious protocol. Her domain included the natural laws that govern divine behavior, the proper procedures for worship and sacrifice, and the principles of justice that maintained cosmic balance. Ancient descriptions present her as having an imposing presence that commanded respect from all who encountered her, with a voice that carried absolute authority on matters of right and wrong. Mnemosyne emerged as the Titaness of memory and the preservation of knowledge across time. Her domain encompassed both individual recollection and the collective memory that preserved cultural traditions and historical events. Ancient sources describe her as possessing perfect recall of every event that had ever occurred, with the ability to share specific memories with other beings through direct mental contact. Her authority extended to the inspiration of poets and storytellers who preserved important knowledge in memorable forms. Phoebe manifested as the Titaness of prophetic radiance and lunar observation. Her domain encompassed the reflective light of the moon and the oracular knowledge that could be gained through careful observation of lunar phases. Ancient descriptions present her as having a silvery appearance that waxed and waned in intensity like the moon itself, with the ability to reveal hidden truths through the careful interpretation of signs and omens. Tethys emerged as the Titaness of fresh water and the nourishment it provided to all living things. Her domain encompassed springs, wells, and the underground water sources that sustain terrestrial life. Ancient sources describe her as having a fluid grace that reflected the movement of water with the ability to purify both physical substances and spiritual contamination through contact with her essence. The birth of the Titans was followed by the emergence of two additional groups of divine beings who shared their parentage but possessed distinctly different characteristics. The three Cyclopes, Brontes, Steropes, and Arges materialized as massive humanoid figures distinguished by the single, enormous eye positioned in the center of each forehead. These beings combined immense physical strength with supernatural crafting abilities, a singular vision allowing them to perceive the internal structure of materials and create objects of unprecedented power and precision. Brontes, whose name meant thunder, possessed the ability to forge weapons that could channel and direct the raw power of storms. His single eye glowed with the intensity of lightning, and his hammer blows produced sounds that echoed like thunder across vast distances. Ancient sources describe his workshop as being filled with the constant sound of metal striking metal, punctuated by brilliant flashes of light as he shaped materials that could withstand divine-level forces. Steropes, known as lightning, specialized in creating illumination devices and objects that could generate or control various forms of radiant energy. His eye burned with a steady white light that could pierce through any darkness, and his crafted items possessed the ability to store and release tremendous amounts of luminous force. His work included the creation of the first permanent light sources and the development of techniques for concentrating and directing energy beams. Arges, called Bright, focused on creating objects of exceptional beauty and precision, his single eye capable of detecting flaws invisible to normal vision. His crafted items possessed perfect symmetry and balance, with surfaces that reflected light in ways that created stunning visual effects. His workshop produced decorative items that serve both aesthetic and functional purposes, combining artistic excellence with practical utility. The three Hecatonchires, Cottus, Briareus, and Gyges, emerged as even more imposing figures, each possessing 50 heads and 100 arms. These beings represented the ultimate expression of physical power and coordination, their multiple limbs allowing them to perform complex tasks with unprecedented speed and efficiency. Their numerous heads provided them with enhanced sensory capabilities and the ability to maintain awareness of multiple situations simultaneously. Cottus, known as the Striker, specialized in combat applications of his extraordinary physical capabilities. His 100 arms could wield weapons with perfect coordination, creating devastating attacks that could overwhelm even the most skilled opponents. His 50 heads allowed him to monitor battlefield conditions from multiple perspectives simultaneously, making him virtually impossible to surprise or outmaneuver. Briareus, called the Strong, focused his abilities on construction and engineering projects that required immense strength and precise coordination. His multiple arms could manipulate massive building materials, while his various heads supervised different aspects of complex construction processes. Ancient sources credit him with the ability to complete in hours projects that would require normal beings years to finish. Gyges, known as the Limbed, developed techniques for using his extraordinary anatomy in defensive applications. His 100 arms could create impenetrable barriers, while his 50 heads maintained constant surveillance of potential threats. His abilities made him the ultimate guardian, capable of protecting large areas and multiple individuals simultaneously. As these powerful offspring matured and began to exercise their various abilities, Uranus experienced growing unease about their potential threat to his authority. The Titans possessed intelligence and capabilities that rivaled his own, while the Cyclops and Hecatonchires commanded physical powers that could potentially challenge his control over the cosmic order. Their very existence represented a shift in the balance of divine power, creating multiple centers of authority where previously only the primordial deities had held sway. The fear that began to consume Uranus stemmed not from any specific threat or rebellion, but from the recognition that his offspring possessed the potential to surpass him. Their specialized domains gave them detailed knowledge of cosmic functions that he controlled only through brute force, while their younger, more flexible minds could adapt to changing circumstances more readily than his ancient consciousness. The mathematical precision of the Cyclops' craftsmanship and the overwhelming physical power of the Hecatonchires represented capabilities that could potentially be turned against him if his children ever chose to rebel. This growing paranoia began to affect Uranus's relationship with Gaia, as he started to view their continued reproduction as a threat to his position rather than a natural expression of their cosmic union. His fear transformed their previously harmonious partnership into a source of tension and conflict, setting the stage for the dramatic events that would reshape the divine hierarchy and establish the conditions under which the next generation of gods would emerge. The harmony that had characterized the early cosmic order began to deteriorate as Uranus's paranoia intensified into active oppression. His fear of being overthrown by his increasingly powerful offspring drove him to a decision that would fundamentally alter the relationship between the generations of divine beings. Rather than confronting his children directly, or attempting to limit their growing influence through negotiation, Uranus chose a path of brutal suppression that demonstrated both his desperation and his fundamental misunderstanding of the forces he sought to control. The Cyclops and Hecatonchires bore the brunt of their father's mounting anxiety. Their extraordinary physical capabilities and specialized skills made them the most obvious targets for Uranus's preemptive action against potential rebellion. The single eyes of the Cyclopes, which allowed them to perceive the internal structure of materials and create weapons of unprecedented power, represented a direct threat to Uranus's monopoly on cosmic authority. Similarly, the 100 arms and 50 heads of each Hecatonchire provided them with combat capabilities that could potentially overwhelm even a primordial deity through sheer coordination and overwhelming force. Uranus's solution involved the use of Tartarus as a prison, though this required him to overcome the resistance of that primordial deity. The negotiation between Uranus and Tartarus established a precedent for using the deepest realm as a place of confinement for beings too dangerous to remain in the upper cosmic levels. Tartarus agreed to contain the Cyclopes and Hecatonchires within his bronze-walled domain, creating specialized prison chambers that could hold beings of their extraordinary capabilities while preventing them from using their powers to escape or communicate with the outside world. The imprisonment process itself involved Uranus physically forcing his children into the depths of the Earth, using his control over atmospheric pressure and celestial weight to drive them downward through layers of rock and soil until they reached the bronze gates of Tartarus. The Cyclops, despite their crafting abilities, found themselves unable to create tools capable of breaking through the metaphysical barriers that Tartarus erected around them. Their single eyes, so effective at perceiving material weaknesses, could not penetrate the divine essence that reinforced their prison walls. The Hecatonchires faced even more sophisticated restraints, designed to neutralize their multiple limbs and heads. Tartarus created binding systems that grew more complex as the prisoners attempted to break free, with each of their 100 arms requiring individual restraint and each of their 50 heads needing separate containment to prevent coordination between different aspects of their consciousness. The prison chambers expanded and contracted in response to their struggles, ensuring that increased effort to escape resulted in tighter confinement rather than greater freedom. The psychological impact of imprisonment affected each group differently. The Cyclops, accustomed to the creative satisfaction of crafting and building, found themselves in an environment completely devoid of materials or tools. Their workshops, filled with the constant sound of hammering and the brilliant flashes of their creative fire, were replaced by absolute silence and darkness. The enforced inactivity created a form of torment specifically calibrated to their nature, as beings whose entire existence revolved around creation found themselves unable to produce anything at all. The Hecatonchires experienced a different but equally devastating form of confinement. Their multiple heads, which normally allowed them to maintain awareness of numerous situations simultaneously, found themselves isolated from any external stimuli worth observing. Their 100 arms, capable of performing complex coordinated tasks, had nothing to manipulate and no projects to complete. The enforced idleness created a psychological pressure that built continuously as their extraordinary capabilities remained fully intact but completely unused. Gaia experienced the imprisonment of her children as a physical and emotional trauma that penetrated to the core of her being. As the earth itself, she could feel their presence within Tartarus like a constant ache in her deepest foundations. The bronze walls that contained them pressed against her internal structure, creating geological stress patterns that manifested as earthquakes and volcanic activity across her surface. Her maternal instincts, which had driven her to nurture and protect all her offspring, found themselves frustrated by her inability to reach or assist the imprisoned Cyclops and Hecatoncheires. The emotional impact of their confinement affected Gaia's relationship with Uranus in ways that neither had anticipated. Her previous willingness to participate in their cosmic union diminished as she associated their embraces with the creation of children who would ultimately face imprisonment, or worse fates. The daily cycle of their coupling, which had previously generated creative energy and cosmic harmony, became a source of tension and resentment as Gaia began to view Uranus not as a partner, but as a threat to their offspring's welfare. The geological consequences of Gaia's distress manifested across the entire world as her emotional state influenced the stability of her physical form. Mountain ranges shifted as her internal tension sought release through tectonic movement. Ocean levels fluctuated as her tears accumulated in vast underground reservoirs before bursting forth as new springs and rivers. The fertility of her soil decreased in regions where her anguish was most intense, while other areas experienced explosive growth as her maternal energy sought alternative outlets for expression. The remaining Titans observed their siblings' imprisonment with growing awareness that their own positions remained precarious despite their apparent freedom. Oceanus, whose domain encompassed the waters that connected all regions of the world, found his currents disrupted by Gaia's geological instability. The underground rivers that had previously flowed in predictable patterns now shifted course as Tartarus expanded his prison chambers, creating new waterways while blocking others entirely. Cronus, as the titan of time and temporal flow, perceived the imprisonment through a unique perspective that revealed its long-term implications. His consciousness, which existed simultaneously across multiple time periods, allowed him to observe the consequences of Uranus's actions, extending far into the future. He witnessed the gradual erosion of cosmic stability as the imprisoned Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires continued to strain against their bonds, their combined efforts creating stress fractures in the fundamental structure of reality itself. The temporal distortions created by the imprisonment affected Cronus's own abilities as the normal flow of time became increasingly chaotic. Events that should have occurred in sequence began to overlap or reverse their order, while cause and effect relationships became tangled in ways that defied rational analysis. His efforts to maintain temporal stability required increasingly complex interventions, as the cosmic order struggled to accommodate the absence of beings whose specialized capabilities had been integral to its proper functioning. Gaia's mounting desperation eventually drove her to seek a solution that would both free her imprisoned children and prevent future acts of oppression by Uranus. Her deep connection to the Earth's mineral resources provided her with access to materials that existed nowhere else in the cosmos. Substances formed under conditions of extreme pressure and temperature that could not be replicated through normal means. Among these unique materials was adamantine, a metal that combined absolute hardness with the ability to cut through any substance, regardless of its divine nature or protective enchantments. The creation of the adamantine sickle required Gaia to draw upon geological processes that normally took millennia to complete. She concentrated the formation of this unique metal into a single location deep within her core, using the heat generated by her emotional anguish to accelerate the crystallization process. The resulting implement possessed characteristics that transcended normal physical properties. Its edge could maintain perfect sharpness regardless of use. Its weight could be adjusted according to the wielder's needs, and its composition included trace elements that made it particularly effective against divine flesh. The design of the sickle reflected both practical considerations and symbolic significance. Its curved blade allowed for sweeping cuts that could sever large areas of tissue with a single motion, while its reinforced handle provided the leverage necessary to generate tremendous cutting force. The symbolic aspects of its design referenced agricultural tools used in harvest, suggesting themes of reaping, seasonal change, and the natural cycle of growth and decay that would characterize Cronus's eventual rule. Gaia's presentation of the sickle to her Titan children represented both a plea for justice and a test of their loyalty to family bonds over their fear of paternal authority. She emerged from the Earth's depths during one of their gatherings, her form bearing visible signs of the geological stress caused by her imprisoned children's struggles. Her skin showed crack patterns that resembled earthquake fault lines, while her hair carried fragments of the precious metals and gems that had been displaced by Tartarus's expanding prison chambers. The adamantine sickle gleamed with an inner light that seemed to absorb and reflect the various forms of illumination present in the gathering. Its surface showed no signs of the intense heat and pressure that had formed it, appearing instead as smooth and perfect as if it had been crafted by the most skilled artisan. The weight of the implement seemed to shift depending on who observed it, appearing manageable to those with the strength to wield it effectively, while seeming impossibly heavy to those who lacked the necessary power or determination. Gaia's appeal to her children emphasized both the injustice of the imprisonment and the potential threat that Uranus's growing paranoia posed to all of them. She described the psychological torment being experienced by the Cyclopes and Hecatonchires, their extraordinary capabilities rendered useless by confinement in an environment that provided no outlet for their specialized skills. Her words carried the weight of maternal authority combined with a geological power that could reshape continents, making her appeal both emotionally compelling and practically urgent. The response of the Titans to their mother's plea revealed the complex loyalties and fears that governed their relationships with both parents. Several of them, including Oceanus and Hyperion, expressed sympathy for their imprisoned siblings, while simultaneously acknowledging their reluctance to challenge Uranus directly. Their domains depended on maintaining cosmic stability. An open rebellion against the sky farther threatened to disrupt the fundamental order that allowed their specialized functions to operate effectively. Others among the Titans, particularly those whose domains involved more abstract concepts, found themselves torn between filial duty and practical considerations. Themis, as the Titaness of divine law and proper custom, struggled with the conflict between the natural justice of freeing wrongfully imprisoned siblings and the established cosmic hierarchy that placed Uranus at the apex of divine authority. Her domain encompassed both the principles that condemned Uranus's actions and the traditions that supported his right to rule as he saw fit. Cronus's response to his mother's appeal differed fundamentally from that of his siblings due to his unique perspective on temporal causality. His consciousness, which perceived past, present, and future as equally immediate realities, allowed him to observe the long-term consequences of both action and inaction in ways that his siblings could not comprehend. He witnessed the gradual collapse of cosmic order that would result from continued imprisonment of the Cyclops and Hecatonchires, as well as the potential for renewal and growth that could emerge from a change in leadership. The decision-making process that led to Cronus's acceptance of the sickle involved calculations that extended far beyond immediate concerns about justice or family loyalty. His temporal awareness revealed that Uranus's rule had reached a point of diminishing returns, where the Sky Father's increasing paranoia and oppressive measures would ultimately destroy the very cosmic order he sought to preserve. The imprisonment of the Cyclopes and Hecatonchires represented only the beginning of a pattern of suppression that would eventually extend to all of Uranus's offspring. Cronus also perceived that his own nature as the Titan of time made him uniquely suited to wield the adamantine sickle effectively. The implement's power to cut through divine flesh required precise timing and coordination that matched his temporal abilities, while its symbolic association with harvest and seasonal change aligned with his domain over cyclical processes. His acceptance of the weapon represented not just a willingness to act against his father, but a recognition that the cosmic order required fundamental restructuring to remain viable. The moment of Cronus's commitment to his mother's cause marked a turning point in the cosmic hierarchy that would resonate through all subsequent divine generations. His grasp of the adamantine sickle created a connection between wielder and weapon that transcended normal tool usage, as the implement's unique properties synchronized with his temporal abilities to create unprecedented cutting power. The sickle's weight adjusted to match his strength perfectly, while its edge aligned with his perception of optimal timing for maximum effectiveness. The planning phase of the assault on Uranus required careful consideration of the Sky Father's daily routine and the optimal moment for attack. Cronus's temporal awareness provided detailed knowledge of when Uranus would be most vulnerable, typically during the evening hours when he descended to embrace Gaia in their cosmic union. This daily coupling represented the only time when Uranus's attention focused entirely on a single activity, creating a window of opportunity for a surprise attack. The coordination between Cronus and Gaia for the execution of their plan involved a level of deception that challenged both participants' fundamental natures. Gaia, whose maternal instincts normally drove her to nurture and protect, had to suppress her natural responses to participate in an act of violence against the father of her children. Cronus, whose temporal domain normally involved maintaining cosmic stability and predictable cycles, had to embrace a course of action that would fundamentally disrupt the established order. The night chosen for the attack arrived with atmospheric conditions that reflected the tension building within the cosmic hierarchy. Uranus descended toward Gaia with his usual confidence, his celestial form covering the entire world as he prepared for their nightly embrace. His attention focused entirely on the anticipated union, leaving him unaware of the adamantine sickle concealed beneath Gaia's surface, or the presence of Cronus hidden within a carefully prepared ambush position. The moment of castration occurred with surgical precision that reflected both Cronus's temporal abilities and the sickle's supernatural sharpness. The curved blade swept through divine flesh that had never before experienced injury, severing Uranus's genitals with a single motion that generated no resistance or warning. The Sky Father's shock at the unexpected attack prevented any immediate defensive response, allowing Cronus to complete the mutilation before Uranus could comprehend what had occurred. The immediate aftermath of the castration created cosmic disturbances that affected every realm of existence simultaneously. Uranus's agonized withdrawal from Gaia's surface generated atmospheric storms of unprecedented intensity, as his pain and rage manifested through violent weather patterns that swept across the entire world. His blood, spilling from the wound inflicted by the adamantine sickle, possessed properties that differed fundamentally from normal divine ichor, carrying within it the concentrated essence of cosmic authority and creative power. The severed genitals, cast into the sea by Cronus's follow-through motion, began a transformation process that would ultimately produce one of the most significant deities of the next generation. The divine flesh, surrounded by the waters of Pontus, generated a foam that possessed both creative and destructive properties. The interaction between the severed organs and the primordial sea created chemical reactions that had never occurred before, as substances that existed only within Uranus's body encountered the ancient waters that had witnessed the birth of the first Titans. The blood that fell upon Gaia's surface produced immediate and dramatic results as it soaked into her soil. The first drops generated the Erinyes, or Furies, 3 female deities whose appearance reflected both the violence of their origin and their destined role as agents of vengeance. Alecto, Megaera, and Tisiphone emerged fully formed from the blood-soaked earth, their bodies combining human characteristics with features that emphasize their function as pursuers of those who violated natural law. Alecto manifested with brass wings that could carry her across vast distances at supernatural speed, her eyes burning with flames that could pierce through any concealment or disguise. Her hair consisted of living serpents that writhed with independent motion, their venomous fangs capable of inflicting wounds that would never heal. Her voice carried the power to drive listeners to madness through the recitation of their crimes and the punishments that awaited them. Megaera emerged with the ability to assume any form necessary to pursue her quarry, her shape-shifting capabilities allowing her to appear as trusted friends or family members before revealing her true nature. Her touch could inflict psychological torment that manifested as physical pain, while her presence generated an aura of guilt and remorse that affected even those who believed themselves innocent of wrongdoing. Tisiphone appeared as the most terrifying of the 3, her form incorporating elements of decay and death that reflected the ultimate consequences of the crimes she pursued. Her breath could wither living plants and corrode metal objects, while her gaze could reveal the hidden sins of any individual, regardless of how carefully they had been concealed. Her specialty involved the punishment of those who committed violence against family members, making her particularly relevant to the circumstances of her birth. The continued absorption of Uranus's blood by Gaia's soil produced additional offspring in the form of the Gigantes, or giants, beings whose size and strength exceeded even that of the Titans, but whose intelligence remained more primitive and focused on physical dominance. These giants emerged as fully grown warriors equipped with weapons and armor that materialized alongside their bodies, their appearance reflecting both their divine parentage and their destined role as challengers to the established cosmic order. The giants possessed physical capabilities that surpassed normal divine beings through their combination of enormous size and supernatural strength. Their bodies could withstand tremendous damage, while their weapons, forged from the same divine essence that created them, possessed the ability to harm even immortal beings. Their primitive intelligence focused primarily on combat and destruction, making them formidable opponents but limiting their ability to engage in complex planning or strategic thinking. The foam generated by Uranus's severed genitals continued its transformation within the waters surrounding it, gradually developing characteristics that would culminate in the birth of Aphrodite. The process involved the interaction of divine creative essence with the primordial waters of Pontus, creating a being whose nature would encompass both the beauty and the destructive power associated with love and desire. Her emergence would complete the cycle of creation that began with Uranus's castration, transforming an act of violence into a source of new divine power. Cronus's assumption of cosmic authority following his father's defeat established him as the new ruler of the divine hierarchy, though his reign would be characterized by very different principles and methods than those employed by Uranus. His domain over time and temporal flow provided him with insights into the cyclical nature of cosmic development, leading him to implement policies designed to promote stability and growth rather than the suppression and fear that had characterized his father's later rule. The liberation of the Cyclopes and Hecatonchires from their imprisonment in Tartarus represented one of Cronus's first acts as the new cosmic ruler, though this decision would ultimately prove to be both politically wise and strategically dangerous. The free prisoners emerged from their confinement with their capabilities intact, but their loyalty to the new regime uncertain, creating a complex political situation that would influence the development of the divine hierarchy for generations to come. The establishment of Cronus as the supreme ruler of the cosmos marked the beginning of an unprecedented era of divine cooperation and systematic organization. Unlike his father's paranoid authoritarianism, Cronus implemented a governance structure based on strategic alliances and complementary domains of authority. His first major initiative involved the creation of marriage bonds among the Titans themselves, recognizing that stable partnerships would provide the foundation for effective cosmic administration and the production of capable offspring to assist in managing the increasingly complex divine hierarchy. The union between Cronus and Rhea represented the most significant of these strategic marriages, combining temporal authority with generational continuity in ways that strengthened both participants' individual domains. Cronus brought to the partnership his mastery over time's passage and his understanding of cyclical processes, while Rhea contributed her expertise in fertility, nurturing, and the successful transition of power between generations. Their physical compatibility extended beyond mere attraction to encompass a synchronization of their divine essences that enhanced both their individual capabilities and their effectiveness as co-rulers. The wedding ceremony between Cronus and Rhea established protocols for divine marriages that would influence all subsequent unions among immortal beings. The event took place at the centre of the world, where Gaia's power was strongest and the connection between earth and sky remained most stable. The ceremony incorporated elements that acknowledged both the cosmic significance of their union and the practical implications for divine governance, with each of the other Titans contributing specialized knowledge or resources that would benefit the new partnership. The physical manifestation of their union created observable changes in both temporal flow and generational processes throughout the cosmos. Cronus's control over time became more nuanced and responsive to biological cycles, while Rhea's fertility powers gained precision and timing that allowed for optimal conditions during conception and birth. Their combined authority established the rhythm of seasons with unprecedented regularity, creating predictable patterns that would allow both divine and mortal activities to develop according to reliable schedules. Oceanus and Tethys formed the second major marriage alliance, uniting the masculine principle of flowing water with the feminine aspect of nourishing moisture. Their partnership created a comprehensive water management system that extended from the great world-encircling river to the smallest mountain springs. Oceanus contributed his vast network of currents and tributaries, while Tethys provided the purification processes and nutrient distribution systems that made water suitable for supporting complex life forms. The domain established by Oceanus and Tethys encompassed every aspect of the hydrological cycle, from evaporation and cloud formation to precipitation and groundwater recharge. Their union produced thousands of offspring who would serve as personifications of individual rivers, streams, and water sources throughout the world. These children, known as the Oceanids and river gods, inherited specialized knowledge of local water conditions and the ability to maintain optimal flow rates and water quality within their assigned territories. The practical impact of their marriage manifested in the establishment of reliable water sources that could support permanent settlements and agricultural development. Their combined efforts created underground aquifer systems that provided consistent water supplies even during periods of reduced rainfall, while their surface water management prevented both devastating floods and prolonged droughts. The coordination between their respective domains allowed for the development of complex ecosystems that depended on precise water chemistry and flow patterns. Hyperion and Theia established a marriage alliance that combined solar observation with precious metal formation and the enhancement of visual perception. Hyperion's mastery of light phenomena merged with Theia's authority over sight and reflective materials to create a comprehensive system for illumination and observation that served both practical and aesthetic purposes. Their partnership enabled the development of sophisticated optical instruments and the establishment of standardized systems for measuring and directing various forms of radiant energy. The offspring produced by Hyperion and Theia would include Helios, Selene, and Eos, personifications of the sun, moon, and dawn respectively. These children inherited their parents' combined expertise in light manipulation and visual enhancement. allowing them to assume direct responsibility for the daily and monthly cycles that regulated terrestrial life. Their specialized knowledge included the precise timing required for optimal plant growth, the coordination of tidal patterns with lunar phases, and the gradual seasonal adjustments that prevented abrupt climate changes. The domain established by this marriage encompassed the creation and distribution of precious metals and gems that possessed unique optical properties. Gold, silver, and various crystalline substances formed under conditions that reflected the combined influence of solar energy and enhanced perception, resulting in materials that could store and redirect light energy while serving as components in advanced optical devices. These substances would later become essential elements in the crafting of divine artifacts and the construction of temples designed to focus and amplify divine presence. Coeus and Phoebe formed a marriage alliance that united intellectual inquiry with prophetic illumination, creating a comprehensive system for gathering, analysing and disseminating knowledge about cosmic functions and future developments. Coeus contributed his expertise in rational analysis and astronomical observation, while Phoebe provided access to oracular knowledge and the ability to interpret signs and portents that revealed hidden truths about upcoming events. Their partnership established the first systematic approach to prophecy that combined empirical observation with divine revelation. The intellectual framework developed by Coeus provided methods for testing and verifying prophetic insights, while Phoebe's oracular abilities revealed information that could not be obtained through normal observational techniques. Their collaboration produced a body of knowledge that encompassed both the mathematical principles governing celestial movements and the symbolic systems that allowed for the interpretation of divine communications. The offspring of Coeus and Phoebe would include Leto and Asteria, both of whom inherited aspects of their parents' combined domains. Leto received the ability to provide safe haven for divine births and the knowledge necessary to protect developing deities during their vulnerable early stages. Asteria inherited the power to transform into stellar phenomena and the ability to maintain the stability of constellation patterns that served as navigational and calendrical references. The marriage between Crius and Eurybia represented an alliance that extended beyond the Titan generation to include the offspring of Pontus and Gaia. Eurybia, as a sea goddess possessing mastery over the violent aspects of oceanic power, brought to the partnership knowledge of storm generation and the control of destructive marine forces. Crius contributed his expertise in stellar observation and the measurement of celestial distances, creating a combined domain that encompassed both navigation and weather prediction. Their union produced offspring who specialized in the intersection of astronomical and meteorological phenomena, including the winds that carried weather systems across vast distances and the stellar configurations that influenced seasonal patterns. The practical applications of their combined knowledge included the development of accurate weather forecasting and the establishment of safe sailing seasons based on the correlation between celestial observations and atmospheric conditions. The marriage alliance between Iapetus and the Oceanid Clymen represented the first major union between a Titan and a member of the second generation of divine beings. Clymen, as one of the daughters of Oceanus and Tethys, possessed detailed knowledge of regional water systems and the specialized conditions required for supporting different types of life forms. Iapetus contributed his understanding of mortality and the biological processes that would eventually govern non-divine life. This partnership established the conceptual framework for mortal existence, combining Iapetus's knowledge of finite lifespans with Clymen's expertise in the environmental conditions necessary for biological development. Their collaboration produced the first detailed plans for creatures that would possess limited lifespans but enhanced adaptability, allowing them to evolve and change in response to environmental pressures rather than remaining static like immortal beings. The offspring of Iapetus and Clymena would include Prometheus, Epimetheus, Atlas, and Menoetius, beings whose specialized knowledge would prove crucial during the eventual transition from divine rule to the age of mortal civilization. Prometheus inherited the ability to foresee consequences and the technical knowledge necessary for advancing civilization through the introduction of new technologies. Epimetheus received the complementary ability to understand past events and learn from previous mistakes, while Atlas gained the physical strength necessary to support cosmic structures during periods of transition. The expansion of Titan influence through their offspring created a complex network of divine beings who possessed specialized knowledge and capabilities that far exceeded anything that had existed during the primordial age. The children of the Titans inherited not only their parents' individual domains, but also the enhanced capabilities that resulted from the combination of complementary powers through marriage alliances. This second generation of divine beings possessed more focused expertise and greater practical skills than their parents, allowing for more sophisticated management of cosmic functions. The Oceanids, as the daughters of Oceanus and Tethys, numbered in the thousands and possessed individual responsibility for specific bodies of water throughout the world. Each Oceanid inherited detailed knowledge of her assigned territory, including the optimal conditions for supporting aquatic life, the seasonal variations that affected water flow and chemistry, and the underground connections that linked her domain to other water sources. Their collective knowledge encompassed every aspect of aquatic environments, from the largest oceanic currents to the smallest seasonal streams. The river gods, as the male offspring of Oceanus and Tethys, possess similar specialized knowledge focused on the management of flowing water systems. Each river god maintained responsibility for a specific waterway, ensuring optimal flow rates, preventing contamination, and coordinating with adjacent water systems to maintain regional hydrological balance. Their individual domains varied tremendously in size and complexity, from the great world-spanning currents managed by the most powerful river gods to the small mountain streams overseen by their lesser siblings. The practical impact of this expanded divine hierarchy manifested in the establishment of natural laws that operated with unprecedented precision and reliability. The hydrological cycle, under the management of thousands of specialized water deities, achieved a level of stability and predictability that allowed for the development of complex ecosystems and the support of increasingly sophisticated life forms. Each component of the water system operated according to principles that balanced local needs with regional requirements, creating an integrated network that could respond to changing conditions while maintaining overall stability. The children of Hyperion and Theia assumed direct responsibility for the daily management of solar and lunar cycles, freeing their parents to focus on broader aspects of light manipulation and optical phenomena. Helios, as the personification of the sun, developed the expertise necessary to maintain optimal solar energy output while adjusting for seasonal variations and regional requirements. His daily journey across the sky followed precisely calculated routes that ensured even distribution of light and heat, while accommodating the varying needs of different geographical regions. Selene, as the personification of the moon, coordinated her phases and orbital patterns with tidal systems and the biological cycles of creatures that depended on lunar rhythms for reproduction and migration. Her reflected light provided illumination during nighttime hours, while her gravitational influence maintained the stability of oceanic currents and the timing of various natural processes that required monthly cycles for optimal effectiveness. Eos, as the personification of dawn, managed the daily transition between night and day with gradual changes in light intensity that prevented shock to both divine and mortal sensibilities. Her expertise included the coordination of atmospheric conditions that produced optimal sunrise and sunset effects, the timing of dew formation that provided moisture for plant growth, and the establishment of daily rhythms that would eventually govern mortal sleeping and waking cycles. The establishment of cosmic functions under Titan governance created an environment of unprecedented stability and abundance that benefited all forms of life throughout the world. The systematic approach to divine administration replaced the chaotic and unpredictable conditions that had characterized the primordial age, establishing reliable patterns that allowed for long-term planning and development. The specialization of divine functions meant that each aspect of cosmic operation received expert attention from beings whose entire existence focused on optimizing their assigned responsibilities. The natural laws established during this period operated according to principles that balance flexibility with stability, allowing for adaptation to changing conditions while maintaining the fundamental relationships that supported complex systems. The water cycle, under the management of Oceanus, Tethys and their numerous offspring, achieved a level of sophistication that could support diverse ecosystems while preventing both floods and droughts. The solar and lunar cycles, managed by the children of Hyperion and Theia, provided reliable energy sources and timing references that enabled the development of agriculture and the establishment of permanent settlements. The coordination between different divine domains created synergistic effects that enhanced the capabilities of individual titans, while producing results that exceeded the sum of their separate contributions. The collaboration between water management and solar regulation optimized growing conditions for plant life, while the integration of temporal control with fertility management ensured that reproductive cycles occurred at optimal times for the survival and growth of offspring. The peaceful coexistence between titans and mortals during this era reflected the abundance and stability that characterized Titan rule. The systematic management of natural resources eliminated the scarcity and competition that would later characterize mortal existence, while the predictable operation of natural laws allowed for the development of sophisticated civilizations that could rely on consistent environmental conditions. The Titans, secure in their domains and confident in their abilities, saw no threat from mortal activities and often provided assistance and guidance to developing civilizations. The relationship between divine and mortal beings during the Golden Age operated according to principles of mutual benefit and respect, rather than the fear and submission that would characterize later periods. Mortals received the benefits of stable climate, abundant resources, and protection from natural disasters, while the Titans gained appreciation for their efforts and occasional assistance with projects that required large amounts of coordinated labor. The absence of conflict between divine and mortal interests created an environment where both groups could focus on development and improvement rather than competition and survival. The technological and cultural achievements of mortal civilizations during this period reflected the favorable conditions created by Titan governance. The availability of reliable water sources allowed for the development of irrigation systems and permanent agriculture, while predictable seasonal patterns enabled long-term planning and the accumulation of surplus resources. The absence of natural disasters and environmental catastrophes provided the stability necessary for the development of complex social structures and the advancement of knowledge and artistic expression. The divine administration established by the Titans created a comprehensive system for managing cosmic functions that would serve as a model for all subsequent divine governments. The combination of specialized expertise with coordinated cooperation produced results that exceeded anything achieved during the primordial age. While the establishment of reliable natural laws provided the foundation for the development of complex civilizations and sophisticated life forms, the success of this system would ultimately create the conditions that allowed for the emergence of the Olympic gods and the transition to the classical period of Greek mythology. The prosperity and stability that characterized Titan rule began to unravel when an ancient prophecy reached Cronus through multiple divine channels, each delivering the same terrifying message with unwavering consistency. The first warning came from Gaia herself, whose deep connection to the Earth's foundations allowed her to perceive the cyclical patterns that governed divine succession. Her words carried the weight of geological ages and the authority of one who had witnessed the rise and fall of cosmic rulers since the beginning of time. The prophecy spoke of inevitable repetition. Just as Cronus had overthrown Uranus through violence and cunning, so too would one of his own children rise to claim his throne through similar means. The second confirmation arrived through the oracular network established by Coeus and Phoebe, whose systematic approach to prophecy had created reliable channels for divine revelation. The astronomical calculations performed by Coeus revealed celestial alignments that historically preceded major changes in cosmic leadership, while Phoebe's lunar observations detected subtle shifts in the patterns of reflected light that indicated approaching transformation. Their combined analysis produced mathematical models that predicted the timing and circumstances of Cronus's eventual downfall with disturbing precision. The third and most unsettling verification came from the fates themselves, Clotho, Lachesis and Atropos, whose authority over destiny exceeded even that of the Titans. These ancient beings, who had emerged from the primordial chaos alongside the first generation of deities, possessed absolute knowledge of every thread in the cosmic tapestry of cause and effect. Their pronouncement carried the finality of natural law, declaring that the pattern of generational overthrow had become an integral part of divine evolution that could not be prevented through any means currently known to exist. Clotho, who spun the threads of destiny, revealed that the pattern had already been woven into the fundamental structure of divine succession. The thread representing Cronus's reign showed clear signs of approaching termination, with new threads beginning to emerge that would represent his successor's rise to power. The spinning wheel that created these destiny threads operated according to principles that transcended individual will or desire, making the prophesied outcome as inevitable as the passage of time itself. Lachesis, who measured the length of each destiny thread, provided specific details about the timing and circumstances of the prophesied overthrow. Her measurements indicated that the crucial events would occur during Cronus's sixth generation of offspring, with the child responsible for his downfall possessing characteristics that combined the most dangerous aspects of previous divine generations. The measuring rod she used to determine thread length showed unprecedented fluctuations when applied to this particular destiny, suggesting that the coming conflict would surpass all previous generational transitions in scope and intensity. Atropos, who cut the threads of destiny at their appointed time, demonstrated the sharpness of her shears by severing sample threads that represented alternative futures where Cronus might avoid his fate. Each attempted alternative resulted in the same outcome through different means, proving that the prophesied overthrow represented a fundamental requirement for cosmic evolution, rather than a mere possibility that could be prevented through careful planning or strategic action. The psychological impact of receiving this prophecy affected Cronus in ways that fundamentally altered his personality and approach to governance. His mastery over temporal flow, which had previously provided him with confidence and strategic advantages, now became a source of constant torment as he perceived multiple future timelines that all culminated in his defeat and exile. The ability to witness his own downfall, occurring across various potential scenarios, created a form of psychological torture that grew more intense with each passing day. His relationship with Rhea began to deteriorate as his paranoia transformed their previously harmonious partnership into a source of suspicion and fear. Every expression of maternal affection toward their potential offspring became evidence of possible conspiracy in Cronus's increasingly unstable mind. His temporal abilities allowed him to observe Rhea's reactions to the prophecy across multiple time periods simultaneously, creating a complex web of suspicion based on actions that had not yet occurred and emotions that existed only as possibilities. The practical implications of the prophecy became apparent when Rhea announced her first pregnancy, an event that should have brought joy and celebration, but instead triggered the first manifestations of Cronus's defensive paranoia. His temporal perception allowed him to observe the developing fetus across multiple stages of growth simultaneously, creating an overwhelming awareness of the child's potential for future rebellion. The knowledge that this child might be the prophesied usurper transformed what should have been a miraculous creative process into a source of existential dread. Hestia emerged as the first victim of Cronus's preventive measures, born into a world where her father's love had been replaced by terror and desperate self-preservation. The birth itself proceeded normally, with Rhea's fertility powers ensuring optimal conditions for delivery and early development. Hestia manifested as a beautiful infant whose divine nature was immediately apparent through the gentle flames that danced around her small form without causing any harm to herself or her surroundings. Her domain over the hearth and domestic harmony was evident even in infancy, as her presence brought warmth and comfort to the immediate environment. The moment of Hestia's consumption by Cronus represented the first fracture in the cosmic order that had characterized the Golden Age. Cronus's jaws, enlarged through divine power to accommodate his daughter's form, closed around the infant with mechanical precision that belied the horror of the act. His temporal abilities allowed him to experience the consumption across multiple time periods simultaneously, creating a recursive loop of guilt and justification that further destabilized his mental state. The act itself violated every principle of paternal protection and family loyalty that had previously governed divine relationships. The physical process of divine consumption differed fundamentally from mortal digestion, as immortal beings could not be destroyed through normal biological processes. Instead, Hestia found herself trapped within a specialized chamber in Cronus's stomach, a space that existed partially outside normal temporal flow and prevented her from aging or developing while maintaining her consciousness and divine powers in a state of suspended animation. The chamber's properties ensured her survival while preventing any possibility of escape or communication with the outside world. Rhea's reaction to witnessing her firstborn's consumption created geological disturbances that manifested as earthquakes and volcanic eruptions across the world's surface. Her fertility powers, suddenly deprived of their primary outlet through maternal nurturing, sought alternative expressions that resulted in explosive plant growth in some regions and complete sterility in others. The emotional trauma of losing her child affected her divine essence in ways that influenced every aspect of generational continuity throughout the cosmos. The birth and consumption of Demeter followed the same horrific pattern approximately 2 years later. Though Cronus's technique had become more refined through practice and psychological conditioning, Demeter emerged as an infant whose connection to agricultural abundance was immediately apparent through the grain stalks that sprouted wherever her tears touched the ground. Her presence brought the scent of fresh bread and the promise of abundant harvests, making her consumption even more tragic as it represented the loss of humanity's future sustenance and agricultural prosperity. The specialized chamber within Cronus's stomach expanded to accommodate his second daughter, creating separate spaces that prevented the imprisoned children from communicating with each other while maintaining the temporal suspension that preserved their lives and consciousness. The isolation imposed by these individual chambers represented a form of psychological torture that complemented the physical confinement, as each child remained unaware of their siblings' presence and survival. Hera's birth occurred during a period when Cronus's paranoia had reached new heights of sophistication and systematic application. Her emergence as the future queen of the gods was evident through the peacock feathers that materialized around her cradle and the regal bearing she displayed even as an infant. Her divine authority over marriage and family relationships manifested through her ability to calm domestic disputes and promote harmony between couples, making her consumption particularly ironic given the circumstances of her birth. The expansion of the stomach chambers to accommodate 3 imprisoned daughters began to affect Cronus's physical form and digestive processes in ways that created visible changes in his appearance and behavior. His midsection became distended and rigid, while his movements acquired a careful deliberation that reflected his awareness of the living beings contained within his body. The constant presence of his daughter's divine essences within him created internal conflicts between his paternal instincts and his determination to prevent the fulfillment of the prophecy. Hades emerged as the first male child born to Cronus and Rhea, his arrival accompanied by manifestations that clearly indicated his future dominion over the realm of the dead. Shadows gathered around his cradle without any apparent source, while flowers wilted and then bloomed again in cycles that reflected the natural processes of death and renewal. His infant cries carried undertones that seemed to echo from vast underground caverns, and his eyes held depths that suggested knowledge of mysteries beyond normal divine understanding. The consumption of Hades represented a particular form of irony, as the future ruler of the underworld found himself imprisoned in a space that shared many characteristics with the realm he would eventually govern. The chamber created for him within Cronus' stomach possessed an atmosphere of profound depth and isolation that mirrored the underground spaces he was destined to rule. His presence within Cronus created the first direct connection between the Titan ruler and the chthonic powers that govern death and the afterlife. Poseidon's birth brought with it the sound of crashing waves and the scent of ocean spray, despite occurring far from any large body of water. His infant form was surrounded by small whirlpools of water that appeared spontaneously in the air around him, while his cries resonated with the deep rhythmic patterns of tidal movements. His connection to earthquakes was evident through the minor tremors that accompanied his emotional states, creating small but noticeable seismic disturbances that affected the immediate area around his birthplace. The imprisonment of Poseidon within Cronus' stomach created the most complex chamber yet, as his oceanic nature required specialized conditions that could accommodate his connection to water and seismic activity. The chamber's properties had to prevent his earthquakes from affecting Cronus' internal structure, while allowing his aquatic essence to remain stable in the absence of actual seawater. The engineering required to create such a space pushed the limits of divine power and demonstrated the increasingly desperate measures Cronus was willing to employ to prevent his prophesied downfall. The systematic consumption of 5 children created cumulative effects that began to destabilize both Cronus' physical form and his mental state in ways that threatened the continued stability of cosmic governance. His stomach had become a complex internal realm containing 5 separate dimensional spaces, each designed to contain a different type of divine essence, while preventing any interaction between the imprisoned siblings. The maintenance of these chambers required constant attention and energy expenditure that left him increasingly exhausted and irritable. Rhea's psychological state deteriorated with each successive loss, her maternal instincts becoming increasingly desperate and her fertility powers growing chaotic and unpredictable. The repeated trauma of childbirth, followed immediately by the consumption of her offspring, created psychological wounds that affected her divine essence in fundamental ways. Her connection to generational continuity, which had previously operated smoothly and naturally, became erratic and painful as her body continued to produce children, while her mind struggled to cope with their immediate loss. The practical implications of Cronus' actions extended beyond their immediate family to affect the broader cosmic order that depended on stable divine leadership. The energy required to maintain the stomach chambers left him with reduced capacity for managing his temporal domain, resulting in irregularities in seasonal cycles and disruptions in the natural rhythms that governed agricultural and biological processes. The other Titans began to notice these inconsistencies and grew concerned about their brother's ability to continue effective cosmic governance. The relationship between Cronus and his siblings became increasingly strained as they observed the changes in his behavior and the deterioration of cosmic stability under his rule. Oceanus, whose water systems required precise temporal coordination to function effectively, found himself compensating for irregularities in seasonal timing that disrupted normal precipitation patterns. Hyperion noticed fluctuations in the solar cycle that required constant adjustments to maintain optimal light distribution. while the children of various Titans reported difficulties in coordinating their specialized functions with the increasingly unreliable temporal framework. The approach of Rhea's sixth pregnancy brought Cronus's paranoia to its absolute peak, as his temporal abilities revealed this child as the most likely candidate for the prophesied usurper. His observations across multiple future timelines showed this sixth child surviving the consumption attempt through various means and eventually growing to challenge his authority with unprecedented power and determination. The knowledge that his preventive measures would ultimately fail with this particular child created a psychological crisis that threatened to completely destabilize his remaining sanity. Rhea's awareness of her husband's deteriorating mental state and her own desperate desire to save at least one of her children led her to seek assistance from Gaia, whose ancient wisdom and deep connection to the Earth's foundations provided access to strategies that transcended normal divine capabilities. The collaboration between mother and grandmother represented a conspiracy that operated across multiple generations of divine authority, combining Rhea's intimate knowledge of Cronus's habits and weaknesses with Gaia's vast experience in cosmic manipulation and strategic deception. The plan they developed required precise timing and flawless execution, as any error would result in the loss of the sixth child and the continuation of the cycle of consumption that had already claimed 5 divine offspring. Gaia's contribution involved the creation of a substitute that could fool Cronus's senses long enough for the real child to be transported to safety, while Rhea's role required her to maintain normal behavior patterns that would not alert her husband to the deception being prepared. The conspiracy between Rhea and Gaia required meticulous preparation that extended far beyond simple deception. Gaia's ancient knowledge of divine physiology provided crucial insights into the specific conditions necessary for the substitute to pass Cronus's initial examination, while her geological powers allowed for the creation of materials that possessed the exact weight, texture, and even the faint divine aura that would characterize a newborn deity. The stone chosen for this deception came from the deepest layers of the earth, where pressure and time had created a substance dense enough to match an infant's mass, while maintaining sufficient structural integrity to withstand the violent process of consumption. The preparation of this substitute required Gaia to infuse the stone with traces of divine essence that would satisfy Cronus's supernatural senses during the crucial moments of the deception. She drew upon her memories of each previous grandchild's birth, incorporating subtle characteristics that would suggest this sixth child possessed similar divine potential, while avoiding any features that might trigger additional scrutiny. The stone's surface was carefully textured to simulate infant skin, while its internal structure was modified to produce the appropriate responses to pressure and handling. The location chosen for Zeus's actual birth required absolute secrecy, combined with optimal conditions for divine development. Gaia selected a hidden cave on the island of Crete, specifically within Mount Ida, where the Earth's natural properties could provide both concealment and nourishment for the developing child. The cave's interior possessed unique acoustic properties that would muffle any sounds associated with divine birth, while its geological composition included minerals that could enhance the growth and development of divine beings during their most vulnerable early stages. The cave itself underwent extensive preparation under Gaia's direct supervision, with modifications that created an environment perfectly suited to supporting a divine infant without external assistance. Underground springs were redirected to provide fresh water, while the cave's temperature was regulated through geothermal processes that maintained optimal conditions regardless of external weather patterns. The walls were lined with crystalline formations that could store and gradually release divine energy, creating a nurturing environment that would promote rapid growth and development. Rhea's labour began under circumstances that required her to maintain perfect composure, despite the physical demands of divine childbirth and the emotional stress of executing a complex deception. Her fertility powers, already strained by the trauma of losing 5 previous children, had to be carefully controlled to ensure that the birth proceeded normally while avoiding any unusual manifestations that might alert Cronus to the extraordinary nature of this particular delivery. The process required her to suppress her natural maternal responses while simultaneously preparing for the immediate separation from her newborn child. The moment of Zeus's emergence marked the culmination of careful planning and divine intervention on an unprecedented scale. The infant manifested with characteristics that immediately identified him as possessing exceptional power and potential, though these traits had to be quickly concealed to prevent their detection by Cronus. Small lightning bolts flickered around his tiny fists, while his cries carried undertones of thunder that resonated through the cave's crystalline walls. His eyes held depths that suggested awareness far beyond normal infant consciousness, and his movements displayed coordination that exceeded typical newborn capabilities. The immediate transfer of Zeus to the prepared cave required split-second timing and absolute precision in execution. Gaia's earth-moving powers created a temporary passage that allowed for rapid transport without exposure to the surface, while Rhea's fertility abilities were used to accelerate the infant's initial development just enough to ensure his survival during the separation period. The process had to be completed before Cronus's temporal senses could detect the unusual energy patterns associated with this particular birth. The substitution of the prepared stone for the actual infant represented the most critical moment of the entire deception. Rhea's performance required her to display the same mixture of maternal affection and resigned despair that had characterized her previous deliveries, while simultaneously ensuring that Cronus's examination of the substitute remained brief and superficial. Her knowledge of her husband's consumption ritual, gained through 5 previous traumatic experiences, allowed her to position the stone in ways that would discourage prolonged inspection. Cronus's consumption of the stone proceeded according to his established pattern, though the substitute's properties created subtle differences that required careful management to avoid detection. The stone's weight and texture satisfied his initial assessment, while the infused divine essence provided the expected spiritual resonance that confirmed its apparent authenticity. The consumption itself occurred with the mechanical efficiency that Cronus had developed through practice. His temporal abilities focused on the completion of the act rather than detailed analysis of its subject. The stone's journey into Cronus's stomach created the first phase of a carefully orchestrated plan that extended far beyond simple concealment. Gaia had designed the substitute to serve multiple purposes once consumed, including the eventual triggering of the emetic response that would free Zeus's imprisoned siblings. The stone's composition included reactive elements that would remain dormant within Cronus's digestive system until activated by specific conditions that could be controlled from outside his body. Zeus's early development within the Cretan cave proceeded under conditions that combined absolute security with optimal nurturing support. The cave's crystalline walls provided constant low-level divine energy that accelerated his growth while enhancing his natural capabilities, allowing him to achieve in months what might normally require years of development. His diet consisted of nectar and ambrosia, provided by supernatural beings who had sworn loyalty to Gaia, ensuring that his physical development remained strong while his divine powers grew at an unprecedented rate. The guardians assigned to protect and nurture the infant, Zeus included the Curates, divine beings whose primary function involved the creation of rhythmic sounds that could mask any noise associated with divine childhood. Their bronze shields and spears produced complex percussion patterns that not only concealed Zeus's presence, but also provided musical stimulation that enhanced his cognitive development. The Curates' dedication to their protective role included willingness to sacrifice their own lives if necessary to prevent Zeus's discovery by Cronus or his agents. The nymph Amalthea served as Zeus's primary caretaker, her specialized knowledge of divine infant care, ensuring optimal conditions for his physical and psychological development. Her ability to produce divine milk provided essential nutrition that supported rapid growth, while enhancing Zeus's natural resistance to various forms of harm. The Horn of Plenty, which would later become one of Zeus's most recognizable symbols, originated from Amalthea's supernatural ability to provide whatever resources were needed for the child's welfare. As Zeus matured within his hidden sanctuary, his developing consciousness began to comprehend the circumstances of his birth and the larger cosmic situation that had necessitated such elaborate concealment. His temporal awareness, inherited from Cronus but enhanced by his unique birth circumstances, allowed him to perceive fragments of past events and potential future scenarios. This growing understanding of his destined role created a sense of purpose that guided his early development and influenced his acquisition of specific skills and knowledge. The education provided to Zeus during his hidden childhood encompassed both practical skills and theoretical knowledge that would prove essential for his eventual confrontation with Cronus. Gaia personally instructed him in the fundamental principles of cosmic governance, while various minor deities contributed specialized knowledge in areas such as weather control, divine politics, and strategic planning. The comprehensive nature of his education ensured that he would possess all necessary capabilities for effective leadership once he assumed his prophesied role. The development of Zeus's signature abilities occurred through intensive training that took advantage of the cave's unique properties and the resources provided by his supernatural guardians. His lightning generation capabilities were refined through practice sessions that utilized the cave's crystalline formations as both targets and energy storage devices. His weather control powers developed through experimentation with the local atmospheric conditions, while his leadership abilities were honed through interactions with the various divine beings who served as his protectors and teachers. The psychological preparation for his eventual confrontation with Cronus required Zeus to develop emotional resilience and strategic thinking capabilities that could withstand the pressures of cosmic-level conflict. His awareness of his siblings' imprisonment within their father's stomach created personal motivation that complemented his cosmic destiny, while his understanding of the broader implications of Titan rule provided the intellectual framework necessary for effective revolutionary leadership. The moment of Zeus's emergence from hiding coincided with his reaching physical and psychological maturity, sufficient for the challenges ahead. His appearance had developed the classical characteristics that would later define his iconography: powerful physique enhanced by divine energy, eyes that reflected both wisdom and determination, and an aura of authority that commanded respect from other divine beings. His voice carried undertones of thunder that could inspire loyalty or strike fear depending on his intentions, while his movements displayed the controlled power of natural forces held in check by conscious will. The strategy for Zeus's initial approach to Cronus required careful consideration of the Titan ruler's psychological state and defensive capabilities. Direct confrontation would likely result in failure, as Cronus's temporal abilities and accumulated power provided significant advantages in open conflict. Instead, the plan developed by Zeus, Gaia, and Rhea relied on infiltration and psychological manipulation that would exploit Cronus's paranoia and growing instability while positioning Zeus for maximum strategic advantage. The identity Zeus assumed for his infiltration involved presenting himself as a young divine being seeking employment within Cronus's court, specifically in the role of cupbearer responsible for serving drinks during official functions. This position would provide regular access to Cronus while appearing sufficiently menial to avoid triggering suspicions about hidden agendas or revolutionary intentions. The role also offered opportunities to observe Cronus's daily routines and identify optimal moments for implementing the planned deception. Meti emerged as Zeus's primary advisor and co-conspirator in the development of this infiltration strategy. Her domain encompassed cunning intelligence and strategic thinking that complemented Zeus's raw power and determination, creating a partnership that combined intellectual sophistication with practical effectiveness. Her knowledge of divine psychology provided crucial insights into Cronus's mental state and the specific approaches most likely to succeed in deceiving him about Zeus's true identity and intentions. The emetic potion developed by Métis represented a masterpiece of divine pharmacology that combined multiple active ingredients with precise timing mechanisms to ensure optimal effectiveness. The primary component consisted of mustard seed extract that had been concentrated through alchemical processes until it possessed the potency necessary to affect divine physiology. Additional ingredients included various herbs and minerals that would enhance the emetic response, while ensuring that the process occurred with sufficient violence to expel all of Cronus's imprisoned children simultaneously. The preparation of this potion required access to rare materials that existed only in specific locations throughout the cosmos, necessitating a complex procurement operation that involved multiple divine agents working in coordination. Métis's network of contacts among minor deities and nature spirits provided the necessary resources while maintaining absolute secrecy about the ultimate purpose of their collection. The brewing process itself took place within hidden laboratories that utilized specialized equipment designed to handle the volatile reactions involved in creating substances capable of affecting Titan physiology. The timing mechanism incorporated into the emetic potion ensured that its effects would manifest at the optimal moment for Zeus's purposes, specifically during a formal gathering where Cronus would be surrounded by other Titans who could witness the dramatic revelation of his imprisoned children. The potion's properties included delayed activation that would prevent immediate detection while ensuring sufficient potency remained when the effects finally manifested. The precise calibration of this timing required extensive knowledge of divine metabolism and the specific conditions within Cronus's stomach chambers. Zeus's assumption of the cupbearer role proceeded smoothly due to Cronus's deteriorating mental state and his reduced attention to routine court functions. The Titan ruler's obsession with preventing his prophesied overthrow had created blind spots in his awareness that allowed Zeus to establish himself within the court without triggering the suspicions that might have occurred under normal circumstances. His performance in the cupbearer role demonstrated competence and reliability that earned him regular access to formal functions and private meetings. The administration of the emetic potion required Zeus to overcome both technical challenges and psychological barriers that tested his commitment to the revolutionary cause. The technical aspects involved ensuring that the potion mixed properly with whatever beverage Cronus chose to consume, while the psychological challenges included maintaining his deceptive identity while witnessing his father's unsuspecting consumption of the substance that would trigger his downfall. The moment of serving the poisoned drink represented the point of no return in Zeus's rebellion against Titan rule. Cronus's violent expulsion of his 5 imprisoned children marked the beginning of the most catastrophic conflict in cosmic history, a war that would fundamentally reshape the divine hierarchy and establish new principles of cosmic governance. The emetic potion's effects manifested with devastating suddenness during a formal gathering of the Titan Council, where Cronus had been presiding over discussions regarding seasonal adjustments and territorial boundaries. The assembled Titans watched in horror as their ruler doubled over in apparent agony, his temporal control flickering erratically as his body convulsed with supernatural force. The first to emerge was Hades, expelled with such violence that his form crashed through the marble floor of the council chamber before materializing in his full divine glory. Years of imprisonment had not diminished his power but rather concentrated it, and the shadows that immediately gathered around him possessed a depth and substance that had not existed before his confinement. His eyes held the accumulated darkness of his captivity, while his presence brought with it the chill of deep underground spaces and the weight of absolute authority over matters of death and judgment. Poseidon followed moments later, his emergence accompanied by torrential floods that burst from underground springs throughout the council chamber. The seawater that materialized around him carried the pressure and force of oceanic depths, while his trident, which had somehow formed during his imprisonment, crackled with the energy of tectonic shifts and tsunami generation. His beard flowed like ocean currents, and his movements created minor earthquakes that cracked the foundation stones of Cronus's palace. Hera's expulsion brought with it the regal authority that had been developing during her imprisonment, her form now radiating the unmistakable presence of divine queenship. Peacock feathers materialized in the air around her, their iridescent patterns reflecting light that seemed to originate from her own divine essence. Her voice, when she finally spoke, carried harmonics that could compel obedience from lesser beings, while her gaze possessed the penetrating quality that could discern truth from falsehood regardless of how skillfully deception had been crafted. Demeter emerged surrounded by the golden glow of ripened grain, her connection to agricultural abundance now enhanced by her understanding of scarcity and loss gained during imprisonment. Wheat stalks sprouted from the chamber floor wherever her feet touched, while the scent of fresh bread and fertile soil filled the air with promises of abundance and renewal. Her hands, when she raised them, caused flowers to bloom spontaneously, while her tears, shed in relief at her freedom, created patches of extraordinarily fertile soil. Hestia appeared last, her gentle flames now possessing a steadiness and warmth that spoke of deep inner strength developed through prolonged isolation. The hearth fires throughout the palace blazed higher in response to her presence, while her aura brought comfort and stability that counteracted the chaos created by her siblings' more dramatic manifestations. Her role as the goddess of domestic harmony was evident in the way her presence calmed the violent atmospheric disturbances caused by the other releases. Zeus's revelation of his true identity to the assembled Titans created a moment of stunned silence that preceded the eruption of cosmic warfare. His lightning, which had been carefully controlled during his infiltration, now blazed forth with the accumulated power of years of hidden development. The thunderbolts that formed around his hands possessed a brightness that forced even divine beings to shield their eyes, while the sound of his voice carried the authority of storms that could reshape landscapes and alter the course of rivers. Cronus's reaction to discovering his deception combined rage, fear, and desperate calculation as his temporal abilities revealed the full scope of the conspiracy that had been operating against him. His perception of multiple timeline possibilities showed him various scenarios for the approaching conflict, most of which culminated in his defeat and exile from cosmic authority. The knowledge that his worst fears had been realized created a psychological break that manifested as violent fluctuations in time flow throughout the immediate area. The declaration of war between the generations occurred without formal ceremony or diplomatic negotiation, as the fundamental incompatibility between Cronus's authoritarian rule and Zeus's vision of divine governance made peaceful resolution impossible. The younger god's demands for cosmic reform and the liberation of all imprisoned divine beings conflicted directly with Cronus's determination to maintain the existing power structure through whatever means proved necessary. The battle lines formed along generational boundaries, with most Titans supporting Cronus while the younger deities rallied behind Zeus's revolutionary leadership. The strategic geography of the conflict divided the cosmos into distinct theatres of operation, each offering different advantages and challenges to the opposing forces. Mount Olympus emerged as the primary stronghold for Zeus and his siblings, its peak providing both a defensible position and symbolic significance as the highest point in the known world. The mountain's unique properties included natural formations that could amplify divine power, while its elevation offered commanding views of the surrounding territories and early warning of approaching enemy forces. The fortification of Mount Olympus required extensive engineering projects that utilized the specialized abilities of various divine beings allied with Zeus's cause. Hephaestus, despite his later birth, contributed his metalworking expertise to create defensive installations that could withstand attacks from Titan-level opponents. The mountain's natural caves were expanded into complex tunnel systems that provided secure storage for weapons and supplies while offering protected routes for troop movement during siege conditions. The Titans established their primary bases of operations across multiple locations that reflected their diverse domains and strategic preferences. Oceanus utilized his vast water network to create mobile command centers that could relocate rapidly through underground rivers and oceanic currents. His ability to coordinate attacks from multiple directions simultaneously made him one of the most dangerous opponents faced by the Olympic forces, as his aquatic highways allowed for troop movements that bypassed traditional defensive positions. Hyperion established his headquarters in the upper atmosphere, where his control over solar energy provided both offensive capabilities and strategic advantages in terms of surveillance and communication. His elevated position allowed him to direct coordinated attacks across vast distances, while his mastery of light phenomena enabled him to blind enemy forces or create diversionary displays that concealed the true locations of Titan military movements. The war's duration of 10 years reflected not the limitations of divine power, but rather the complex strategic calculations required for cosmic-level conflict. Each major engagement required extensive preparation and careful timing to avoid collateral damage that could destabilize the fundamental forces holding reality together. The combatants had to balance their desire for victory against their responsibility to maintain the basic natural laws that supported all life throughout the cosmos. The early phases of the conflict favored the Titans due to their superior numbers, established territorial control, and accumulated experience in cosmic governance. Cronus's mastery of temporal manipulation allowed him to coordinate attacks with precision timing while creating temporal distortions that disrupted enemy communications and supply lines. His ability to accelerate or decelerate time in localized areas gave Titan forces significant tactical advantages during individual battles. The Titans' control over fundamental natural forces created challenges for the Olympic forces that required innovative solutions and unprecedented cooperation between divine beings with different specialties. Atlas's strength allowed him to literally move mountains to create new defensive positions or block enemy advance routes, while his brothers Prometheus and Epimetheus provided strategic intelligence and tactical analysis that helped Titan forces anticipate and counter Olympic strategies. The turning point in the conflict's trajectory occurred when Zeus made the crucial decision to seek alliance with the Cyclops and Hecatonchires, whose imprisonment by Uranus had created lasting resentment against the existing cosmic order. The liberation of these powerful beings from Tartarus required a dangerous expedition into the deepest regions of the underworld, where Zeus had to negotiate not only with the prisoners themselves, but also with Tartarus as the personification of that realm. The descent into Tartarus tested Zeus's leadership abilities and personal courage in ways that no previous challenge had approached. The bronze walls that contained the Cyclopes and Hecatonchires had been reinforced over the centuries since their initial imprisonment, requiring Zeus to demonstrate his worthiness through trials that proved his commitment to justice and his capability for effective cosmic governance. The negotiations with Tartarus involved complex agreements about future prisoner management and the establishment of protocols for the confinement of beings who posed threats to cosmic stability. Bronte, Steropes, and Arges emerged from their imprisonment with their crafting abilities not only intact, but enhanced by centuries of forced contemplation about the theoretical principles underlying their work. Their single eyes, which had been denied any visual stimulation during their confinement, now possessed heightened sensitivity that allowed them to perceive the internal structure of materials with unprecedented precision. Their hands, unused for so long, retained perfect muscle memory of techniques developed before their imprisonment, while gaining new capabilities derived from their extended meditation on metallurgical theory. The forging of Zeus's thunderbolts represented the first major project undertaken by the liberated Cyclopes, combining their individual specialties into a collaborative effort that produced weapons of unprecedented power and sophistication. Bronte contributed his expertise in thunder generation, creating resonance chambers within the bolt structure that could amplify sound waves to devastating levels. Steripes added lightning control mechanisms that allowed for precise targeting and variable intensity output, while Arges incorporated visual effects that could blind opponents or create diversionary displays. The Thunderbolt's construction utilized materials that existed nowhere else in the cosmos, substances that the Cyclops had theorized about during their imprisonment but never had the opportunity to work with directly. Divine bronze formed the primary structural components, its properties enhanced through alchemical processes that increased its conductivity and durability beyond normal metallurgical limits. Crystallized lightning provided the energy storage systems, while compressed thunder created the acoustic amplification chambers that gave the weapons their characteristic sound effects. Poseidon's trident emerged from the Cyclops' workshops as a weapon that combined control over aquatic forces with seismic manipulation capabilities that reflected his dual domain over oceans and earthquakes. The three-pronged design allowed for simultaneous control over different aspects of his power, with each prong specialized for specific applications. The central prong focused oceanic currents and tidal forces, while the outer prongs generated seismic waves and controlled underground water systems. The trident's construction required the incorporation of materials drawn from the deepest ocean trenches and the most geologically active regions of the Earth's crust. Deep-sea metals that had been compressed under oceanic pressures for millennia provided the structural foundation, while crystallized seawater created the focusing mechanisms that allowed for precise control over aquatic phenomena. Earthquake essence, captured during major seismic events, powered the weapon's ability to generate tectonic disturbances. Hades' helmet of invisibility represented the most complex achievement of Cyclops' craftsmanship, requiring the manipulation of light, shadow, and perception in ways that challenged the fundamental principles of divine visibility. The helmet's primary function involved bending light around the wearer's form, while simultaneously affecting the psychological perception of observers to prevent detection through supernatural senses. The device's operation required constant energy input that drew upon the wearer's own divine essence, making it unsuitable for extended use by beings with limited power reserves. The helmet's construction utilized materials that existed primarily in the boundary regions between different cosmic realms, substances that possess properties of both visibility and concealment simultaneously. Shadow essence formed the primary structural material, its paradoxical nature allowing it to exist as solid matter while maintaining its essential characteristic of light absorption. Crystallized darkness provided the optical manipulation systems, while fragments of the void between stars created the perception-altering mechanisms. The liberation of the Titanomachy brought to Zeus's cause military assets that fundamentally altered the strategic balance of the conflict. Cottus, Rheraeus and Gyges had spent their imprisonment developing coordination techniques that allowed their multiple arms and heads to function with even greater efficiency than before their confinement. Their 100 arms could now operate independently while maintaining perfect synchronization, creating the equivalent of a 100 warrior fighting unit within each individual being. The Hecatonchira's combat capabilities extended far beyond simple physical strength to encompass sophisticated tactical applications that utilized their unique anatomy for maximum effectiveness. Their 50 heads allowed them to maintain simultaneous awareness of multiple battlefield sectors, while coordinating complex maneuvers that would be impossible for beings with normal sensory limitations. Their 100 arms could wield different weapons simultaneously, creating devastating combination attacks that overwhelmed enemy defenses through sheer volume and variety of assault. The climactic engagement of the Titanomachy occurred when the Hecatonchires demonstrated their ultimate capability through the coordinated hurling of massive boulder volleys that transformed the very landscape of the battlefield. Each of the three beings could launch 100 projectiles simultaneously, creating a devastating barrage that no conventional defense could withstand. The boulders themselves were not ordinary stone, but rather fragments of mountains that had been torn from their foundations and hurled with such force that they retained destructive potential even after travelling vast distances. The sound created by these boulder barrages exceeded anything previously experienced in cosmic warfare, as 300 massive projectiles moving at supernatural speeds generated acoustic effects that could be heard across multiple realms simultaneously. The impact patterns created by the coordinated volleys demonstrated tactical sophistication that reflected careful planning and precise timing, with each barrage designed to achieve specific strategic objectives rather than simple destruction. The Titans' response to these overwhelming displays of force revealed the limitations of their traditional approach to cosmic governance and military strategy. Their individual powers, however impressive, could not match the coordinated assault capabilities of beings specifically designed for warfare and destruction. The psychological impact of facing opponents whose very anatomy provided insurmountable advantages began to erode Titan morale and unity in ways that affected their combat effectiveness. Cronus' final desperate attempts to maintain his position involved increasingly extreme measures that threatened the stability of the cosmic order he claimed to be protecting. His temporal manipulations became more violent and unpredictable, creating chronological distortions that affected both sides of the conflict while making coordinated strategy nearly impossible. His willingness to risk fundamental damage to the structure of reality itself demonstrated the extent to which his paranoia and desperation had overwhelmed his judgment and sense of cosmic responsibility. The final collapse of Titan resistance occurred when Atlas, their most physically powerful champion, found himself overwhelmed by the combined assault of all three Hecatonchires, working in perfect coordination. His legendary strength, which had allowed him to move entire mountain ranges and redirect the course of major rivers, proved insufficient against opponents who could attack from 300 different angles simultaneously while maintaining tactical awareness through 150 heads. The moment when Atlas's defences finally crumbled marked the psychological breaking point for the remaining Titan forces, as their confidence in ultimate victory evaporated along with their most formidable warrior's resistance. Cronus himself faced the inevitable confrontation with Zeus amid the ruins of what had once been the cosmic centre of Titan authority. The temporal distortions he had created in his desperation now worked against him, as the chaotic chronological fluctuations prevented him from accurately predicting the timing and direction of Zeus's lightning attacks. His mastery over time, which had been his greatest advantage throughout the conflict, became a liability as the fractured timeline made coherent strategy impossible, while his exhausted divine essence struggled to maintain control over the increasingly violent temporal storms he had unleashed. Zeus's final assault on his father combined raw power with strategic precision that reflected years of careful planning and the accumulated wisdom gained through 10 years of cosmic warfare. The thunderbolts crafted by the Cyclops discharged their energy in carefully timed sequences that exploited the gaps in Cronus's temporal defences, while the lightning strikes themselves carried not just destructive force, but also binding properties that could restrain even Titan-level opponents. The sound of thunder that accompanied each bolt resonated with frequencies specifically calibrated to disrupt Cronus's concentration and prevent him from maintaining the complex mental focus required for temporal manipulation. The moment of Cronus's defeat occurred not through a single devastating blow, but rather through the systematic dismantling of his defensive capabilities until resistance became impossible. His temporal powers, strained beyond their limits by extended combat and psychological pressure, finally collapsed entirely, leaving him vulnerable to physical restraint for the first time since his rise to cosmic authority. The adamantine chains that bound him had been forged by the Cyclops using techniques developed specifically for containing beings of Titan-level power, their construction incorporating materials and methods that made escape through conventional means impossible. The capture of the remaining Titan leadership proceeded with methodical efficiency, as Zeus's forces exploited their momentum and the psychological impact of Cronus's defeat. Hyperion's surrender came after his solar stronghold in the upper atmosphere was systematically dismantled by coordinated attacks from Poseidon's storm systems and Zeus's lightning strikes, which disrupted his light-based defences and forced him to ground level where he could be overwhelmed by superior numbers. His proud bearing remained intact even in defeat, though his eyes held the hollow look of someone whose fundamental understanding of cosmic order had been shattered by events beyond his control. Coeus and Creus found themselves trapped within a carefully constructed tactical situation that had exploited their reliance on astronomical observation and stellar navigation. Zeus's forces had spent months positioning themselves to create false celestial patterns that fed incorrect information to the two Titans' navigational systems, leading them into an ambush where their intellectual advantages became meaningless. The precision required to execute such a deception demonstrated the sophisticated strategic thinking that characterized the Olympic approach to warfare, combining brute force with psychological manipulation in ways that the more traditionally minded Titans had not anticipated. Iapetus's capture required different tactics due to his association with mortality and his understanding of finite existence, which made him more adaptable to changing circumstances than his siblings. His knowledge of biological limitations and evolutionary processes had allowed him to develop survival strategies that prolonged his resistance even after the main Titan forces had been defeated. The final confrontation occurred in a remote mountain valley where Iapetus had established a hidden stronghold, using his understanding of mortal tactics to create defensive positions that maximized the advantages of terrain and concealment. The binding process itself represented one of the most complex magical undertakings in cosmic history, requiring the coordination of multiple divine specialists, working with materials and techniques that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible, even by immortal standards. The adamantine chains created for this purpose differed significantly from conventional restraints, incorporating not just physical binding properties but also metaphysical constraints that could contain divine essence and prevent the use of supernatural abilities that might otherwise allow escape. Tartarus underwent significant modifications to accommodate his new role as the primary prison for defeated Titans. His bronze walls reinforced with additional layers of divine metals and protective enchantments that could withstand prolonged assault from beings of cosmic-level power. The expansion of his internal chambers required careful engineering to prevent the imprisoned Titans from communicating with each other or coordinating escape attempts, while the environmental conditions within each cell were calibrated to maintain the prisoners' physical health while preventing any recovery of their combat capabilities. The Hecatonchires accepted their new role as guards and wardens with the same methodical efficiency they had displayed during the war, their multiple arms and heads providing surveillance capabilities that made escape attempts virtually impossible to execute successfully. Cottus established himself as the primary administrator of the prison system, his 50 heads allowing him to monitor all imprisoned Titans simultaneously while his 100 arms could respond to multiple security threats without compromising overall vigilance. Briareus focused on the physical maintenance of the prison infrastructure, using his extraordinary strength to reinforce containment systems and repair any damage caused by prisoner resistance or natural deterioration. Gyges specialized in the psychological aspects of prisoner management, his multiple heads providing him with insights into the mental states of the imprisoned Titans that allowed him to anticipate and prevent potential rebellion or escape attempts before they could develop into serious threats. His understanding of divine psychology, enhanced by centuries of his own imprisonment, made him uniquely qualified to recognize the warning signs that preceded prisoner uprisings, while his 100 arms could implement countermeasures with speed and precision that overwhelmed any organized resistance. The establishment of individual containment protocols for each imprisoned Titan required detailed analysis of their specific abilities and potential escape methods, with customized restraint systems designed to neutralize their particular strengths, while maintaining the basic conditions necessary for immortal survival. Cronus's cell incorporated temporal stabilization fields that prevented him from manipulating time flow within his immediate vicinity, while the chronological isolation ensured that his consciousness remained synchronized with normal time passage, rather than the accelerated or decelerated states he might prefer. Hyperion's imprisonment required specialized light dampening systems that prevented him from drawing energy from solar sources or creating the brilliant displays that had characterized his military tactics. The walls of his cell absorbed electromagnetic radiation across all spectrums, while the interior lighting remained at levels sufficient for basic visibility, but inadequate for power accumulation. His isolation from celestial phenomena represented a form of sensory deprivation specifically calibrated to his divine nature, creating psychological pressure that discouraged escape attempts while avoiding actual torture or cruel treatment. The decision regarding which Titans would face imprisonment and which might receive pardons required careful consideration of their roles during the conflict and their potential value to the new cosmic order being established under Zeus's leadership. Oceanus emerged as the most obvious candidate for clemency due to his neutral stance during much of the war, and his essential role in maintaining the world's water systems, which could not function effectively without his direct participation and expertise. Oceanus's meeting with Zeus to negotiate the terms of his continued freedom took place in a neutral location where both parties could speak without the pressure of military advantage or disadvantage affecting their discussions. The ancient Titan's bearing remained dignified despite his side's defeat, his vast experience in cosmic governance providing him with insights into the practical requirements of effective administration that Zeus needed to understand. His willingness to acknowledge the legitimacy of the new regime while maintaining his personal dignity impressed the younger god and demonstrated the possibility of peaceful transition between the old and new orders. The terms of Oceanus's pardon included his continued responsibility for global water management, though now operating under the ultimate authority of Zeus rather than as an independent cosmic ruler. His extensive network of rivers and streams would remain under his direct control, while his children among the Oceanids and river gods would continue their specialized functions with minimal interference from the new administration. The arrangement recognized both the practical necessity of maintaining existing water systems and the political value of demonstrating that cooperation with the new regime would be rewarded rather than punished. Themis received similar consideration due to her domain over divine law and proper custom, areas where her expertise would prove invaluable to Zeus as he established new protocols for cosmic governance. Her neutrality during the conflict had been based on her understanding that cosmic law transcended individual rulers, making her loyalty to principles rather than personalities a valuable asset for any legitimate government. Her knowledge of legal precedents and traditional procedures provided essential continuity between the old and new administrations, while her reputation for fairness and impartiality made her an ideal advisor for sensitive political matters. The integration of Themis into Zeus's administration required careful attention to the balance between innovation and tradition, as her expertise in established customs needed to be combined with the new approaches that characterized Olympic governance. Her role as an advisor on legal matters allowed her to influence the development of new laws and regulations, while ensuring that changes remained consistent with fundamental principles of justice and cosmic order. Her presence in the new government also served as a signal to other neutral or potentially sympathetic Titans that cooperation would be welcomed and rewarded. Mnemosyne's pardon reflected Zeus's recognition of the essential role that memory and knowledge preservation played in maintaining cosmic stability and cultural continuity. Her domain encompassed not just individual recollection, but also the collective memory that preserved the lessons learned from previous cosmic ages, making her cooperation crucial for preventing the repetition of past mistakes. Her neutrality during the war had been based on her understanding that knowledge belonged to all beings, rather than serving the interests of any particular faction or ruler. The establishment of Mnemosyne's role in the new cosmic order involved her continued responsibility for preserving important knowledge while accepting new duties related to the education of future generations of divine beings. Her perfect memory of historical events provided Zeus with access to detailed information about previous governmental systems and their successes or failures, while her ability to share specific memories through direct mental contact allowed for efficient transfer of crucial knowledge to key administrators and advisors. Prometheus presented a more complex case due to his family connections to the defeated Titans and his specialized knowledge of mortal affairs, which would become increasingly important as Zeus developed plans for the creation and governance of human civilization. His foresight abilities had allowed him to perceive the likely outcome of the Titanomachy before its conclusion, leading him to maintain a carefully neutral stance that avoided direct opposition to either side while preserving his potential value to whoever emerged victorious. The negotiations regarding Prometheus's status under the new regime involved detailed discussions about his future role in cosmic governance and his willingness to accept Zeus's authority in matters that affected the broader divine hierarchy. His knowledge of mortal psychology and biological requirements made him uniquely qualified to assist in the development of human civilization, while his intellectual capabilities and strategic thinking skills could prove valuable in various administrative capacities. However, his independent nature and tendency toward innovative solutions that challenged established protocols created concerns about his reliability as a subordinate administrator. The eventual decision to grant Prometheus conditional freedom while maintaining careful surveillance of his activities reflected Zeus's recognition of both his potential value and his potential danger to the established order. His continued access to divine society and his participation in certain governmental functions would depend on his willingness to accept limitations on his independence and his commitment to supporting rather than undermining the new cosmic administration. The arrangement established precedents for dealing with other, potentially problematic individuals whose specialized knowledge made them too valuable to imprison, but too dangerous to trust completely. The fate of Atlas required special consideration due to his exceptional physical capabilities and his central role in Titan military operations during the war. His strength, which exceeded that of any other individual being in the cosmos, made conventional imprisonment impractical, while his tactical knowledge and leadership experience created ongoing security concerns that could not be ignored. The solution developed by Zeus and his advisors involved a unique form of punishment that would utilize Atlas's strength for cosmic maintenance while ensuring his permanent separation from potential allies or followers. The assignment of Atlas to support the celestial sphere represented both punishment for his rebellion and recognition of his unique capabilities, as no other being possessed sufficient strength to maintain the separation between earth and sky that was essential for cosmic stability. His position at the western edge of the world placed him in permanent isolation, while his constant burden prevented him from developing or implementing any escape plans. The psychological impact of eternal monotonous labour served as both punishment and deterrent, demonstrating the consequences of opposing Zeus's authority while providing a visible reminder of the new regime's power and determination. The establishment of Zeus's new cosmic order required careful integration of surviving Titans, whose specialized knowledge and abilities remained essential for maintaining universal stability. The transition from the authoritarian rule of Cronus to Zeus's more collaborative approach created opportunities for reformed relationships between the generations, though these arrangements demanded delicate negotiations that balance punishment for rebellion against practical necessities of cosmic governance. The most significant of these integrations involved Themis, whose expertise in divine law and proper custom made her indispensable to the new administration despite her previous allegiance to the Titan cause. Themis's acceptance into Zeus's inner circle as his primary legal advisor represented a fundamental shift in how cosmic justice would be administered under the new regime. Her deep understanding of natural law and divine protocol provided essential continuity between the old and new systems, while her reputation for absolute fairness ensured that legal decisions would be perceived as legitimate by both divine and mortal populations. Her physical presence in Zeus's court commanded immediate respect from all participants. Her tall, imposing figure draped in robes that seemed to shimmer with the weight of accumulated legal precedents, and her voice carrying the authority of countless centuries spent interpreting cosmic law. The daily consultations between Zeus and Themis established protocols for divine governance that would influence all subsequent Olympic administration. Her advice extended beyond simple legal interpretation to encompass the broader principles of justice that should guide divine behavior and the establishment of social order among both immortal and mortal populations. Her knowledge of traditional customs provided Zeus with insights into which established practices should be maintained and which could be modified or abandoned without undermining the fundamental stability of cosmic order. Themis's role in establishing the new divine hierarchy involved her direct participation in the formal ceremonies that legitimized Zeus's authority and defined the relationships between different levels of divine beings. Her presence at these events provided the legal foundation that transformed Zeus's military victory into legitimate governmental authority, while her public endorsement of the new system encouraged other neutral or wavering deities to accept the changed circumstances. Her ability to cite specific legal precedents that supported the transition of power helped establish the new regime's legitimacy in ways that simple force could never achieve. The marriage between Zeus and Themis occurred not from romantic attraction but from mutual recognition of the practical benefits that such a union would provide to both parties and the cosmic order as a whole. Themis gained protection and enhanced status within the new hierarchy, while Zeus acquired not only her legal expertise, but also the symbolic legitimacy that came from union with a Titaness, whose authority predated his own. Their wedding ceremony incorporated elements of both Titan and Olympic traditions, creating new precedents for intergenerational divine marriages, while demonstrating the possibility of peaceful cooperation between former enemies. The offspring produced by this strategic marriage would become some of the most important figures in the Olympic pantheon, a combined heritage providing them with unique capabilities that reflected both Titan wisdom and Olympic innovation. The Fates, Clotho, Lachesis and Atropos, inherited their mother's understanding of cosmic law combined with their father's authority over divine destiny, creating beings whose power to control individual fates operated within carefully defined legal and ethical frameworks. Their role in the new cosmic order involved not arbitrary manipulation of destiny, but rather the systematic implementation of natural justice according to principles that balanced individual choice with cosmic necessity. The seasons, Horai, emerged from this union as personifications of natural order and temporal regulation, their existence ensuring that the agricultural cycles essential for mortal survival would continue to operate with reliable precision. Their individual specializations reflected different aspects of temporal management, with each season possessing detailed knowledge of the environmental conditions and biological processes that characterized that assigned period. Their coordination with their father's weather control abilities and their mother's understanding of natural law created a comprehensive system for managing the annual cycle that supported both divine activities and mortal civilization. Mnemosyne's integration into the new cosmic order followed a different pattern due to her specialized role as the preserver and transmitter of knowledge across generations. Her neutrality during the Titanomachy had been based on her understanding that memory and knowledge belonged to all beings, rather than serving the interests of any particular political faction. Zeus's recognition of her essential role in maintaining cultural continuity led to her acceptance into Olympic society without the formal negotiations required for other former Titan allies. The union between Zeus and Mnemosyne represented his acknowledgement that effective governance required not just power and legal authority, but also access to the accumulated wisdom of previous ages. Mnemosyne's perfect recall of historical events provided Zeus with detailed information about the successes and failures of previous cosmic administrations, while her ability to share specific memories through direct mental contact allowed for efficient transfer of crucial knowledge to key administrators and advisors. Their relationship combined Zeus's forward-looking vision with Mnemosyne's comprehensive understanding of past events, creating a balanced perspective that could guide decision-making with both innovation and wisdom. The 9 muses born from this union inherited their mother's perfect memory combined with their father's creative authority, resulting in beings whose specialized knowledge encompassed every aspect of artistic and intellectual achievement. Each muse developed expertise in specific areas of cultural expression, their individual domains reflecting different ways that knowledge could be preserved, transmitted, and enhanced through creative activity. Calliope's mastery of epic poetry provided methods for preserving historical events in memorable forms, while Clio's expertise in historical writing created systematic approaches to documenting and analysing past events. Euterpe's specialization in music and lyric poetry established the principles for emotional expression through artistic creation. Her compositions capable of conveying complex feelings and ideas that could not be communicated through simple speech or writing. Melpomene's domain over tragedy provided frameworks for understanding the serious consequences of moral choices and the inevitable results of violating natural law, while Thalia's expertise in comedy offered methods for addressing social problems through humour and satirical observation that could promote positive change without creating destructive conflict. Polyhymnia's mastery of sacred hymns and religious music created standardized approaches to divine worship that enhanced communication between mortal and immortal beings while providing appropriate reverence for divine authority. Terpsichore's specialization in dance and choral performance established physical expressions of artistic beauty that could inspire spiritual elevation and promote social harmony through coordinated group activities. Erato's expertise in love poetry and romantic expression provided frameworks for understanding and celebrating the emotional bonds that held communities together and ensured generational continuity. Urania's domain over astronomy and celestial knowledge created systematic approaches to understanding cosmic order through mathematical observation and theoretical analysis, her expertise bridging the gap between divine revelation and empirical investigation. Her work established the foundations for mortal scientific inquiry while maintaining appropriate reverence for the divine forces that govern celestial phenomena. The collective influence of all 9 muses created a comprehensive system for cultural development that ensured mortal civilizations would have access to the knowledge and inspiration necessary for continued advancement. The continued worship and reverence of certain titans in mortal religious practices reflected the recognition that these ancient deities retained authority over fundamental natural forces that affected daily life regardless of changes in cosmic political leadership. Oceanus maintained his role as the personification of the world-encircling river and the source of all fresh water, his worship continuing in coastal communities and river settlements, where his influence remained directly observable and practically essential. Mortals understood that regardless of Zeus's supreme authority, their immediate survival depended on Oceanus's continued management of water systems and his willingness to maintain the hydrological cycles that supported agriculture and human settlement. The religious practices associated with Oceanus worship incorporated both traditional Titan rituals and newer elements that acknowledged Zeus's ultimate authority while recognizing Oceanus's specialized domain. Libations poured into rivers and springs honored his direct presence in local water sources, while prayers for favorable weather and abundant harvests recognized the coordination between his water management and Zeus's control over atmospheric conditions. The integration of old and new religious elements created hybrid practices that maintained cultural continuity while adapting to changed political circumstances. Hyperion's continued reverence reflected mortal recognition of his ongoing role in solar observation and light phenomena, areas where his expertise remained unmatched despite the emergence of his son Helios as the active personification of the sun itself. Mortal astronomers and calendar keepers maintained traditional observances that honoured Hyperion's contributions to their understanding of celestial cycles, while acknowledging that his knowledge now operated within the framework of Zeus's cosmic authority. The practical benefits of accurate astronomical observation ensured that Hyperion's worship continued among communities that depended on precise timing for agricultural and navigation purposes. The offspring of Titans, who became major figures in Greek mythology, demonstrated the continued influence of Titan bloodlines within the new cosmic order, their inherited capabilities often exceeding those of purely Olympic deities, while their loyalty to Zeus's regime remained subject to individual choice and circumstance. Atlas, despite his punishment and isolation, produced children whose extraordinary abilities reflected their father's strength combined with their mother's specialized knowledge, creating beings whose potential power required careful monitoring by Olympic authorities. The Pleiades, born from Atlas's union with the Oceanid Pleione, inherited their father's connection to celestial mechanics combined with their mother's expertise in specific regional water systems, resulting in star nymphs whose influence extended across both astronomical and terrestrial domains. Their transformation into a constellation provided them with permanent visibility in the night sky, while ensuring their continued separation from potential political activities that might threaten Olympic stability. Their seasonal appearance and disappearance created natural calendar markers that assisted mortal navigation and agricultural planning while maintaining their connection to divine authority through their placement in Zeus's celestial domain. Prometheus's complex relationship with the new cosmic order reflected both his value as an advisor on mortal affairs and the ongoing suspicion regarding his ultimate loyalty to Zeus's authority. His foresight abilities had allowed him to anticipate the Titanomachy's outcome and position himself advantageously for the transition period. But these same capabilities made him potentially dangerous if he chose to oppose Olympic policies or pursue independent agendas that conflicted with established governmental priorities. His knowledge of mortal psychology and biological requirements made him essential for planning the creation and development of human civilization, while his intellectual independence and tendency toward innovative solutions created ongoing tensions with more conservative Olympic administrators. The relationship between Prometheus and Zeus involved careful balancing of mutual benefit against potential conflict, with both parties recognizing the advantages of cooperation while maintaining awareness of their fundamental differences in approach and philosophy. Prometheus's expertise in biological engineering and his understanding of evolutionary processes provided essential technical knowledge for the creation of mortal beings who could survive and thrive in terrestrial environments. His insights into the psychological and social requirements for successful civilization development offered guidance for establishing human societies that could maintain stability while continuing to advance in knowledge and capability. Epimetheus's role as Prometheus's brother created additional complexity in managing Titan-descended beings within the Olympic system, as his complementary abilities in understanding past events and learning from previous mistakes provided valuable analytical capabilities, while his close family relationship with the potentially problematic Prometheus created ongoing security concerns. His expertise in historical analysis and his ability to identify patterns in past events that predicted future developments made him useful for policy planning and strategic assessment, while his tendency to act impulsively and his emotional attachment to his brother's welfare created potential vulnerabilities that required careful management. The sun god Helios, as the son of Hyperion and Thea, represented the successful integration of Titan bloodlines into active Olympic administration through his assumption of direct responsibility for solar management. His daily journey across the sky in his golden chariot, drawn by fire-breathing horses, demonstrated both his inherited expertise in light manipulation and his acceptance of Zeus's ultimate authority over celestial phenomena. His role required precise coordination with other Olympic deities responsible for weather patterns, seasonal changes, and agricultural cycles, creating a complex network of divine cooperation that ensured optimal conditions for both divine activities and mortal civilization. Helios's palace in the eastern sky served as both his personal residence and the operational center for solar management activities. Its golden walls and crystalline windows designed to capture, concentrate, and redirect solar energy according to the requirements of different geographical regions and seasonal conditions. His horses, Pyrrha, Eos, Ethon, and Phlegon, possessed individual specializations in different aspects of solar energy generation and distribution, their coordination ensuring that the sun's daily passage provided appropriate illumination and heating, while avoiding the extremes that could damage terrestrial life or disrupt atmospheric stability. The symbolic representation of the Titanomachy as the triumph of order over chaos resonated throughout subsequent Greek cultural development, providing a foundational narrative that explained the establishment of current cosmic conditions while justifying the authority of Olympic deities over both natural forces and human civilization. The conflict's interpretation emphasized not just the victory of younger gods over older ones, but rather the replacement of arbitrary authoritarian rule with a more systematic and cooperative approach to cosmic governance that balanced individual divine authority with collective responsibility for universal welfare. This symbolic framework influenced mortal understanding of political legitimacy and social organization, providing models for governmental transition that emphasized the importance of legal continuity and institutional stability rather than simple conquest or revolutionary upheaval. The integration of reformed titans into the new system demonstrated that political change could occur without complete destruction of existing knowledge and capabilities, while the punishment of unrepentant rebels established clear consequences for continued opposition to legitimate authority. The preservation of Titan mythology through ancient literary sources represents one of the most remarkable achievements in cultural transmission, ensuring that these primordial narratives survived the collapse of Bronze Age civilizations and continue to influence human understanding of cosmic order for millennia. Hesiod's Theogony, composed in the 8th century BC, stands as the most comprehensive ancient account of Titan genealogy and the cosmic conflicts that shape divine succession. The poet's systematic approach to cataloguing divine relationships and their associated powers created a foundational text that would influence all subsequent interpretations of Greek cosmology and religious thought. Hesiod's presentation of the Titans emphasized their role as representatives of natural forces and cosmic principles, rather than simply anthropomorphic deities with human-like personalities and motivations. His descriptions of Oceanus as the world-encircling river and Cronus as the personification of time itself reflected a sophisticated understanding of divine symbolism that connected mythological narratives to observable natural phenomena. The Theogony's detailed genealogies established clear relationships between different generations of deities, while explaining how various natural forces came to be organized under divine authority. The poet's account of the Titanomachy provided a dramatic framework for understanding political transition and the establishment of legitimate governmental authority. themes that resonated with his contemporary audience's experiences of social change and political upheaval. His emphasis on Zeus's strategic intelligence and willingness to form alliances with previously oppressed beings offered models for effective leadership that combined strength with diplomatic skill. The integration of reformed titans into the new cosmic order demonstrated principles of reconciliation and practical governance that influenced Greek political thought for centuries. Apollodorus's library, compiled during the 1st or 2nd century AD, provided additional details about Titan mythology that complemented and expanded upon Hesiod's foundational account. His systematic approach to organizing mythological information created a comprehensive reference work that preserved numerous variant traditions and local legends that might otherwise have been lost. The library's detailed descriptions of individual titans and their specific domains offered insights into how different Greek communities understood and worshipped these ancient deities. Apollodorus's treatment of the Cyclopes and Hecatonchires provided crucial information about their specialized capabilities and their roles in the cosmic conflicts that shaped divine succession. His descriptions of their imprisonment by Uranus and subsequent liberation by Zeus emphasized themes of justice and liberation that connected mythological narratives to contemporary political concerns. The detailed accounts of their contributions to Zeus's victory demonstrated how technical expertise and specialized knowledge could prove decisive in conflicts between different forms of authority. The preservation of Titan mythology and fragmentary works by other ancient authors created a diverse collection of sources that revealed regional variations and evolving interpretations of these primordial narratives. Pindar's victory odes incorporated references to Titan genealogies and their connections to specific geographical locations, demonstrating how local communities claimed descent from or association with particular Titans to establish their cultural identity and religious authority. These references provided valuable information about how Titan worship continued in various forms throughout the classical period. Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound offered a dramatic interpretation of Titan mythology that emphasized themes of rebellion, suffering, and ultimate reconciliation between different generations of divine authority. The playwright's presentation of Prometheus as a sympathetic figure who suffered for his dedication to human welfare created a complex moral framework that challenged simple interpretations of the Titanomachy as a conflict between good and evil forces. The play's exploration of the relationship between divine authority and individual conscience influenced subsequent philosophical and literary treatments of similar themes. The evolution of Titan imagery in Roman mythology and literature reflected both direct borrowing from Greek sources and innovative adaptations that addressed specifically Roman cultural concerns and political circumstances. Ovid's Metamorphoses incorporated Titan narratives into a comprehensive poetic account of transformation and change that connected mythological events to contemporary Roman experiences of political and social upheaval. The poet's treatment of the Golden Age under Cronus's rule provided an idealized vision of peaceful abundance that contrasted sharply with the violence and uncertainty of his own historical period. Ovid's descriptions of individual Titans emphasized their roles as personifications of natural forces, while incorporating Roman religious concepts and terminology that made these ancient Greek deities accessible to Latin-speaking audiences. His account of Atlas's punishment and transformation into a mountain demonstrated how mythological narratives could be adapted to explain specific geographical features while maintaining their symbolic significance as representations of cosmic order and divine justice. The poet's sophisticated understanding of Greek mythological traditions allowed him to create innovative variations that preserved essential narrative elements while addressing Roman cultural values and concerns. Virgil's references to Titan mythology in the Aeneid integrated these ancient narratives into his epic account of Rome's legendary origins and destined greatness. His presentation of the Titans as representatives of primordial chaos that had been overcome by more civilized forms of divine authority supported his broader themes about the triumph of Roman order over barbarism and uncertainty. The poet's strategic use of Titan imagery reinforced his political message about Augustus's role in establishing lasting peace and prosperity after decades of civil conflict. The influence of Roman interpretations on subsequent European understanding of Titan mythology created lasting changes in how these ancient narratives were perceived and utilized in later cultural contexts. Roman emphasis on political allegory and moral instruction transformed Greek mythological materials into educational tools that could convey lessons about proper governance, individual responsibility, and the consequences of challenging legitimate authority. These interpretative frameworks continued to influence Renaissance and later treatments of classical mythology. The rediscovery of classical texts during the Renaissance period sparked renewed interest in Titan mythology among artists, writers, and philosophers, who found in these ancient narratives powerful symbols for their own cultural and intellectual concerns. Michelangelo's frescoes in the Sistine Chapel incorporated Titan imagery that connected biblical creation narratives to classical mythological traditions, demonstrating how Renaissance artists could synthesize different cultural traditions into unified artistic visions that addressed both religious and secular themes. Michelangelo's depiction of the separation of earth and sky in his creation scenes drew upon classical descriptions of Uranus and Gaia, while adapting these images to Christian theological frameworks. His presentation of divine creative power emphasized both the majesty and the terrible responsibility associated with cosmic authority, themes that resonated with contemporary concerns about political power and religious reform. The artist's sophisticated understanding of classical mythology allowed him to create images that functioned simultaneously as religious art and cultural commentary. The Renaissance revival of interest in classical learning created new opportunities for scholarly analysis of Titan mythology that combined humanistic educational goals with emerging scientific approaches to understanding natural phenomena. Renaissance scholars recognized that ancient mythological narratives contained valuable information about early human attempts to explain natural processes and cosmic relationships, making these texts important sources for understanding both cultural history and the development of scientific thought. Renaissance philosophical treatments of Titan mythology explored connections between ancient cosmological concepts and contemporary debates about the nature of political authority, individual freedom, and the relationship between divine and human governance. Thinkers like Marsilio Ficino and Pico della Mirandola found in Titan narratives symbolic representations of cosmic principles that could illuminate contemporary philosophical problems while providing historical perspective on enduring human concerns about power, justice, and social organization. John Milton's Paradise Lost represented the culmination of Renaissance engagement with classical mythology, incorporating Titan imagery and themes into a comprehensive epic that addressed fundamental questions about authority, rebellion, and redemption. Milton's presentation of Satan's rebellion against divine authority drew heavily upon classical accounts of the Titanomachy, while adapting these narratives to Christian theological frameworks that emphasize moral choice and individual responsibility for spiritual destiny. Milton's sophisticated understanding of classical mythology allowed him to create complex allegorical structures that functioned on multiple interpretive levels simultaneously. His use of Titan imagery to represent different aspects of cosmic conflict provided readers with familiar mythological frameworks for understanding theological concepts, while demonstrating the continued relevance of ancient narratives for addressing contemporary spiritual and political concerns. The epic's influence on subsequent English literature ensured that Titan mythology would continue to shape cultural expression for centuries. The development of modern archaeological and scholarly approaches to ancient mythology has fundamentally transformed understanding of Titan narratives by placing them within broader contexts of ancient Greek religious practice, social organization, and cosmological belief systems. Archaeological discoveries at sites like Dodona and Delphi have provided physical evidence for the worship of Titans and other pre-Olympic deities, demonstrating that these ancient figures retained significant religious importance throughout the classical period, despite their mythological defeat by Zeus and the Olympic pantheon. Excavations at Bronze Age sites throughout Greece and the Eastern Mediterranean have revealed religious artifacts and architectural features that suggest continuity between prehistoric religious practices and the classical mythological traditions preserved in literary sources. Minoan and Mycenaean religious imagery includes representations of earth goddesses and sky gods that appear to be precursors to later Titan mythology, indicating that these narratives preserved genuine memories of earlier religious traditions that were gradually incorporated into classical Greek mythological systems. Modern scholarly analysis of Titan mythology has revealed sophisticated symbolic systems that encoded ancient Greek understanding of natural processes, social relationships, and cosmic order in narrative forms that could be transmitted across generations through oral tradition and later literary preservation. The systematic organization of Titan genealogies reflected attempts to create comprehensive explanatory frameworks that could account for the observed relationships between different natural phenomena while providing moral and political guidance for human communities. Comparative analysis of similar mythological traditions from other ancient cultures has demonstrated that Titan narratives participate in widespread patterns of cosmic mythology that appear across different civilizations throughout human history. The conflict between older and younger generations of deities, the association of primordial beings with fundamental natural forces, and the establishment of cosmic order through divine warfare represent common themes that suggest shared human concerns about understanding natural processes and establishing legitimate social authority. Modern psychological and anthropological approaches to mythology have provided additional insights into the symbolic functions of Titan narratives within ancient Greek culture, and their continued relevance for contemporary understanding of human psychology and social organization. The Titan's representation of primordial forces that must be controlled but not destroyed reflects sophisticated understanding of the relationship between civilized order and the natural energies that both threaten and sustain human communities. The enduring influence of Titan mythology in contemporary culture demonstrates the continued relevance of these ancient narratives for addressing fundamental human concerns about power, authority, and the relationship between individual freedom and social order. Modern literary works, films, and other cultural productions continue to draw upon Titan imagery and themes, adapting these ancient symbols to address contemporary political and social issues while maintaining connections to the rich mythological traditions that have shaped Western cultural development for millennia. The scholarly study of Titan mythology continues to evolve as new archaeological discoveries and analytical approaches provide fresh insights into the historical contexts and cultural functions of these ancient narratives. Digital humanities projects have created comprehensive databases of mythological variants and their geographical distributions, revealing previously unrecognized patterns in how different communities adapted and preserved these traditional stories. Interdisciplinary approaches combining archaeology, linguistics, and comparative mythology continue to deepen understanding of how Titan narratives functioned within ancient Greek society while illuminating their continued significance for contemporary cultural expression. The preservation and transmission of Titan mythology from ancient Greece to the modern world represents one of humanity's most successful efforts to maintain cultural continuity across millennia of political, social, and religious change. These ancient narratives have survived the collapse of the civilizations that created them, adapted to new cultural contexts and interpretive frameworks, and continued to provide symbolic resources for understanding fundamental aspects of human experience. Their enduring influence demonstrates both the power of mythological thinking to address universal human concerns and the remarkable capacity of cultural traditions to maintain their essential characteristics while adapting to changing historical circumstances. The legacy of the Titans thus extends far beyond their original mythological contexts to encompass their role as foundational elements in the development of Western cultural tradition. Their stories continue to resonate because they address timeless questions about the nature of authority, the relationship between order and chaos, and the ongoing human struggle to understand and control the natural forces that shape our existence. In preserving and reinterpreting these ancient narratives, each generation has contributed to a living tradition that connects contemporary culture to its deepest historical roots, while providing frameworks for understanding the challenges and opportunities of the present moment.